Okay, hello everybody. I'm here today with Angel. We've had to do this really weird concoction of us to get this video out. It used to be so easy. We used to go straight to Google Live on the Hangouts on YouTube and it used to all work, but we're doing this privately. So you've got Angel, me and me, and I have to be on twice, one to record and one to talk. And then Angel wants to be on a few times to show you his stuff. Is that right, Angel?
So that sounds.
Okay, we're just going to test this out, but we might put this in the main video, but this is the beginning. But this is what we have to do a hangout. Here we go. We're on a hangout now, me and Angel. So Angel looks like a proper professor.
I need a white lab coat.
Yeah, you'll have to wear one of those, Angel. Right, so where are we starting then today? Because obviously Angel wanted to show you on a whiteboard what he's talking about sometimes rather than just talking about it. He wants to show you.
Yeah, I wanted to do a few things. I wanted to be able to also present photos because part of the thing is seeing. I think seeing is believing. And if you don't see it, well, then it's just kind of hearsay. So, see where, for some reason, I'm having oh, there they are, photos, they're great. So you can see my images, right? There we go. You can see my images for sure, or is it delayed? Because what I see is delay. I don't even hear you.
Can you get rid of that change settings on there? Because it's covering the pictures a little bit.
Obviously, you can see me. Boom, that one.
That's it.
Okay. Well, first I thought we could rummage through some photos because if I show you the photos, when I explain the scenario, you can then have seen the images so you don't think I'm just making stuff up. This is a very small image, probably taken in the mid-1900s. I'm trying to see if I can zoom in on it. There we go. Okay. This area is in the grotto, and it actually amazes me that these guys are wearing suits and ties to climb through this thing. But either way, that's the grotto area.
It must have been really hot.
Well, from what I understand, the pyramid stays at a nice 68 degrees. Just like most caves do. That's the natural ambient temperature of the Earth, is about 68 degrees. But either way, hot or not, that's one area. This I really like to point out. They have taken that particular area and turned it into what they like to call a grand step. They've plastered it over and made it so it's smooth. They've put a little handle rail and steps there. You know, you don't want grandma sliding down the grand gallery there. However, they have made modifications to the physical structure compared to how it was. Now, the other thing you can notice, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but kind of right in the center, northern part of the center of the structure, you can see some scarring on the side there. Now, we'll get into that when we get into the function and what was occurring, but by the fact that I can point it out, I'm not fabricating it. It existed. This is one of the areas I like the best. Now, today, this area is filled with a fan, but at the time, it was open just as you see it there. This is the southern shaft out of what they like to call the King's Chamber. I like to call it the combustion chamber. And we'll get into exactly what it is, but you can see there the unique shape. And they like to suggest that it's that unique shape because some guy launched cannonballs at it or something like that is the theory. But how someone would carry a cannon up into the structure and then shoot it in an enclosed room like that baffles me. And how they would get nice squared, well, they're not completely squared, but you can see they're pretty squared corners there. That's not really something I would see as damage that was engineered. And we'll get into that shortly. This particular image is of the bottom of the Grand Gallery. You can see the word Grand Gallery there. And you can see that the lip coming up from the, what they like to call the ascending chamber, and the floor line of the Queen's chamber, it's actually a few inches taller. I think it's like 3 or 4 inches taller there. Now, that's not a mistake, and that it was done to channel the elements, in this case, the liquids, inside the structure to go where they wanted it to go, which, again, no need for that to be if it is some sort of a monument for a dead person. But when we look into the function and how it worked, all these little anomalies make sense. Here's a separate image of there. You can see how it is engineered. And all these pictures, I try to keep at photos.greatgizapyramid.com, so anyone can go and look at them, zoom in on them, read them, inspect them, call my bluff. Now, this unfortunately is a drawing, a sketch, and not a photograph. But in it, you can see, you know, if it was a photograph, I think it came from the 1800s, and at the time, photography was in its infancy. And probably very expensive and difficult to get the correct lighting inside a structure like this, you know, things like that. But you can see the lip. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but right there's the lip I was talking about, which would direct any liquids inside on the floor line of this to spill into what they like to call the well shaft. But we'll get into that shortly. This is in the hallway of the, what they like to call the Queen's Chamber, between the Grand Gallery and the Queen's Chamber. Not exactly, it's a photo. I have it, it's there. It shows the step. It also shows a cut right there. Now, you can say that that's a mistake or an anomaly, but when we get into the function of the unit, you'll find out that more and more that this was truly communication. They were communicating by leaving marks and signs dictating the function of the structure. But of course, these guys were knuckle dragging people, and there was no communication. This is a photo, again, from the 1850s, I believe. And it shows that the niche in the Queen's Chamber was filled with, at the time, fill, dirt, sediment. Now, they like to say that this fill is there because they excavated that hole and then refilled it in. We'll get into that shortly, but I don't find that to be true, because you'd have some dirt and fill on here, but you notice this whole floor line is a fairly level, consistent thing, such that if it was filled with water, a liquid at a time, the floor line would be a level, fairly level, consistent thing, and not piles of dirt as if they had excavated it and then shoved it back in. You don't see any evidence of that. You know, you can mentally make it up, but it's not there in the photo. Now, the other thing is, this rock and a couple of these other rocks, they will actually have a function, and they are in the photos, and I'm not going to dismiss them, and I don't have to fabricate them because they're there in the photos. We'll get to that as we go on. Here's somebody who didn't.
Hey, Angel.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Lots of graffiti on the walls.
Not going to dismay that. People have been in there. People have done graffiti. You can, see that. That's pretty much English. That's not no hieroglyphics and ducks or anything like that. Those are people who have gone in there. They wanted to leave their mark, just as unfortunately Graham Hancock's father did on the top of the Great Giza Pyramid. But that happens. This photo you will never be able to take again, because the area the photographer is in is currently piled with dirt. But this is in the, you can still see me on the other camera, right? This is on the area right down here that they like to call, I don't even know what they call it, the bottom of the well shaft, I think is what they like to call it. And you can I don't know. It's just a photo. I grabbed all the photos and put them on here. You're welcome to peruse through them. But it is a photo that the position the person is in is currently blocked because they don't want people entering the bottom of the well shaft. So this is a very important part. This is where the descending shaft connects to the level shaft, which is actually, if I could hop out of here, I'd like to see if I can find why. There's way more pictures. Again, I hate how Google decides what pictures I want. Oh, there they go. They're showing up now. Hang on while I find an image which, come on, show up. Where are you? Either they're not showing it to me or they've deleted it, which is unfortunate because they, like I said, Google likes to take images off my thing. Probably they feel they're copyrighted. I don't know what their reason is, but they like to take them off even though I took the time and effort to stick them there. And I cannot find, yes, it is gone. What I'm looking for is definitely gone. And I know it was on there. Anyway, the bottom area they like to refer to as the subterranean section, which is fine. I don't like to call it the unfinished room because it's not unfinished. I think it's actually perfect the way it is, and the system shows it. It has to be perfect the way it is. It has to be finished because there's scarring and evidence that the system was functioning at one point, and hence, yeah, they're gone, and hence it can't be unfinished. That really bums me. I'm going to have to re-review all these photos and upload stuff because I have them on hard drive somewhere. But in the section, let's get back to that photo. Boop, 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 boop. There it is. In that section, you'll see how the descending shaft is a couple inches larger than the level shaft in that area. And that'll come more important when we talk about its function and how it's working. Here's another image of the same area. You can see they put a little, I'm not sure if that line you see just above the, I think it's a meter stick there, or a yardstick. It was probably a yardstick. They probably didn't have the meter at the time. Oh, and you know what I'm noticing? This image is actually on its side because that's someone's foot right there. So this image technically needs to be rotated. You know, I'll do that later because I don't think I'm in the position to be able to edit it right now. But that image is actually rotated. It needs to be rotated 90 degrees clockwise. Unless the person is lying on their floor. You know, actually, I think they're lying on their floor with their legs against the wall to try to get out of the photo. But I don't know. Again, you can see my mouse right there. There is a ridge that goes around the entire it may even go along the floor line, but again, it's covered with dirt in this picture, so we can't tell. But that rim, that ridge will come into play when we discuss the function, which I've discussed many times. This is the, I should skip over it. I should talk about everything. This is the subterranean chamber as they found it before it was, hang on, I'm on a learning curve here. This is not doing what I want it to do. Back to that room. I was trying to blow it up. There we go. There you go. You can see it was covered in, I'm going to say, debris. And that's because the fins in this room, which we'll get to as we come into further photos, the fins were not a functional part of the system. They are a communication part of the system, if you want to believe in communication. But here you can see I was talking about before up in the other area where you could tell where they moved dirt. This area here, they removed dirt from, and you can see where they piled it right there. They excavated it from there to get down and look at it. But at the time, this pile of dirt was actually up against there. Not that, again, isn't necessarily a functional thing, but they did move stuff around. They didn't leave it exactly as they found it. And you're going to notice later that this pile of dirt is also going to get moved. But it's there in that photo, and you can see how it's dry. And in a later photo, you're going to see that it's moist because they removed it. This right here, they have also this little delta shape right there. They've also plastered over. They considered it imperfection.
Can I say something quickly?
Of course you can.
Why has it got all that writing on the walls? What did that
Graffiti.
mean?
That's people who were down there. Probably says Bob was here 1902 or something. Thus of,
Wow.
I don't know. I don't think it's in English. That doesn't look, well, and is English. I mean, that could be somebody's name, like Bob and, blah, 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 we're here in a year. I don't know, but that's graffiti. That writing is I'm going to call it current day stuff. That is not, and you can even see, again, this right here is damp. You can see how it's a dark color and not a light color. That's because they excavated that dirt from there. Again, not super important. It's not a functional thing, but I'm showing you that they moved stuff around as they were exploring here. Now this rock right here, this is its original position. And I'm going to show you in later photos where they moved it. But this is original position. You can see these markings on the wall right there. And in later photos, I'm going to show you where they moved it, but the markings are much more pronounced when you can see the, I guess you could call it the shadowing of where the rock once was. And we'll get to that in a couple of photos. Here it is again in its original position. Right now it sits about here. Somebody rolled it out of the way. Well, they may have lifted it. I don't know if they rolled it. I wasn't there at the time they did it. Here, remember that pile of dirt I was talking about? It's gone. And there he is standing where that pile of dirt once was. Again, showing you that they have moved things in the structure. And in order for us to really look at it, it should be viewed in how they found it, not into the changes they made. Remember that photo I told you that was taken from some guy? It's about where his foot is down here, and it was taken up this shaft to the descending shaft. This is the entrance to the bottom of what they like to call the well shaft. Now, and you can also see the dark color here. That is because they excavated dirt from that area to get down to ground, to solid, it's actually limestone, but we can call it rock. Limestone is a rock, it doesn't matter. All right, here is another photo of somebody else going up there, and they put wires here to show you the, to help demark what is horizontal and what is at what angle, just so the photographs. This is the area of the grotto. Now this, earlier, we saw a gentleman standing here, and the other gentleman was over here. In the bottom section, one was here and one was there. And those are the two that I said, were dressed up in a suit and tie, but yet they were climbing in this thing. Now this is, they like to call it the grotto. It's a very important part. It is the area I like to call the cathode. When you're dealing with scientific experiments and stuff like that, the one area where it is sucking up electrons is the cathode. The area where it's emitting electrons is the anode. I don't know if you remember that from 7th grade science. They probably don't teach it nowadays with Common Core, but that's that is. Now this gentleman is in the same area as the other photo. This is a different photo from a different time period, but that gentleman is sitting in the same location as this guy right here, only it's taken from this vantage point instead of the other vantage point. This tells me that a third person was in the room, and they're actually on the other side. Let's get back to that. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. The photo was taken from somebody over on this side over here, and the photo of the one we just looked at, that one, is taken by somebody over here or over here. It doesn't matter which way you want to look at it, but that's just so you have a reference. Now this photo was a very revealing photo to me. Shows you that there were obstructions, and these obstructions will come into more play as we talk about the system, but there were obstructions in the descending shaft. Now, I'll call them obstructions, but they were actually intended to be there. And what they will do as we work on the system is the water flow will hit there and it'll act as a wall, a block, so that the stream of water doesn't continue down. You can see here how it's the rock, the dirt is level and smooth, just like it is in the arc chamber, like they call the Queen's chamber. I showed you the photo before. That's because the water here was pretty still. It didn't have a flow or a current through it. It was a still. The current was up above there, but once it hits the rock, that current is squelched. This area is within the area that we broke into the structure. It's just a photo. I added it because it was part of the set. But what you see here was never part of the functioning unit. The area above where this guy is climbing goes to the ascending shaft. And if he was to go down and to the left, that would lead to the descending shaft. But this area was the excavated area, not part of it. This is what I like to call the inlet spillway. They like to refer to it as the original entrance.
Angel, is that like the window thing on the other side?
Window on the other side.
Well, you know, like you said, this is where the water went in and the spill came out.
Yes. In fact, that image right there, we'll get to it in a second, is right next to, in fact, it's this right here. You can see the size of it. This is a pretty big thing. And the image you're talking about, let me pull it up real quick, just so that, yep, there it is. Right. Man, my computer's being slow. The other picture was looking down into that, what I like to refer to as the spillway. And what you're referring to is this over here. You want to call it a window? That's fine. The area on the bottom, I believe, is where the water would have entered in as a, we're going to talk about how the pressures, water and its pressures and how it works. These two openings, that one and this one, were specifically engineered at certain elevations to ensure that the pressures of the waters were such that when it filled, and we go back to that spillway we were looking at, hang on, let me get back up here. Come on, open up, work with me here. The spillway on the outside is at the same elevation as this, and such that the waters would never achieve enough pressure to be able to spill over this hurdle. They actually would have been about here. When we look at the elevations of the whole system, if I can zoom in here, you can even see it. Okay, this here, which I believe is off. To my understanding, it's actually more up here. If you raise that up about 10 feet, it is on the same elevation as this particular conduit. And it is done so that the bottom part of this structure can be saturated, but the waters will never be able to come up the well shaft and spill into there or spill into here. They will be maintained so that the area down here, if you can see my mouse, this area will be saturated, but the waters from outside of the structure won't be able to get past this area. In fact, as we work at it, I don't think they ever, when it was functioning, came up above what we like to refer to as the grotto. Even though the pressure would have allowed it, the system is such that it maintained it at a lower level. And we'll get into that as we go. But I just wanted to show you all this stuff so that when I say something, you've already had your eyes on it. We've already looked back at that. Let me get back to where I was. So back down, we're, oh, here we are. We're over here. We looked at that, looked at that. Oh, and we will get into what this right here, these little squiggles, again, I'm going to refer to that as communication, and it shows us the elevations and by default the pressures of what's occurring within the structure, this area here. And this area here, I can't prove it, but if somebody was to dump like a 50-gallon thing of water into there, it would, I'm hoping, would start to flow out the area that I was suggesting. Where's that other photo? I should probably put these in an order where I can get to it easier. The one picture we were just looking at with the two things on the side. The water, when it would not be allowed to exceed a certain elevation, and it would spill out and through that other conduit on the side. This would maintain the water level. The pressures in the water level would be ensured that it would never interfere with the system on the inside. Now, I think this is the Grand Gallery, but to be honest with you, this could also be one of the other pyramids in the area. I don't actually know. So I'm going to skip over this photo because I don't know its origin. It was just in a group of photos that I added. Oh, one thing I'd like to point out that I didn't mention. You notice when I get back to it, in, come on, two more. Where the heck is it? Let me get back to the big list of photos. In, please hold. Come on, we just looked at the photo. There it is. You notice right up here is a big D letter. Now, that is probably the like dimensions of what they like to refer to as the boss mark. And I believe it is such because there are certain locations within the structure that there is a choice that the energy, pressure, water, however you want to look at it, has a choice to, it divides. This is one of them. And when we get into the function, we will talk about how that could be communication, because it's in a perfect spot where there is a change in a deviation from the pressures within the structure. This is very important when I discuss that over here to the side where my mouse is going, that's the area they like to call the thieves tunnel. Right above this photo is the area they like to call the boss mark. And if you were to turn around, you'd be staring at what they like to refer to as the Grand Gallery. I like to call it the condensation chamber. But what's most important is any liquids that would be at this elevation can't get up. Liquids don't go up unless they're steam or hot water or things like that. They don't go up. They go down. You can also see right here there's a ridge which would ensure the liquids up here had a path to come down, and they wanted to make sure that it came down the side. We'll get to that as we progress in the system. This right here is the second structure, and we'll get to that one in time. But what's really important that I know it makes no sense to anything other than my view of the system is this particular conduit here. Now, this is a pretty low-grade thing, so when I'm zooming in, it looks all fuzzy, but there is a conduit there, and this also isn't a good representation of exactly the way the structure is constructed. But again, it's part of the problems with drawings is I'd rather have photos, and it would be really good to have, there are nice blueprint versions of this. Unfortunately, I have them in a photograph on my other phone. I did not remember to copy them over before I started this. This is the boss mark I was talking of. And that right there, he's standing 1 foot above and 1 foot below the ridge that I was talking. This is the boss mark. And the waters up here would be allowed to flow down there and flow down the system. The water is coming out of the, what they like to call the thieves entrance, would come down and flow that way, because that's just the way nature's going to do it. It's going to pile up and it's going to flow. You dump a water pot of water, and it's going to go somewhere. This is one of the 3 areas they like to suggest you had spindles or something on it for ropes and pulleys, and that's all wonderful. It's there. It exists. I don't suggest that it doesn't exist. At no point I'm going to try to gaslight you and say it doesn't exist. However, I don't think it served the purpose they suggest it served. You can see repair work. I was talking about how this was damaged. Somebody put a chunk of metal on there to keep this rock from cracking and falling off. That's great and wonderful, but there is damage there. And we'll discuss how that damage occurred as we discuss how the system functioned. There's also a little well pit here, just like you have going down the entire length of the Grand Gallery. Now, those are going to be more important when we look into the pressures and densities of the water, and when we discuss how steam would go up, it would condense, it would come down, and what's going on. This right here is that same area I showed you, the little picture, and then where they have the red arrow there is where they want to tell you there was some sort of a pulley system, but the other side of the structure doesn't seem to have any markings that would in any way agree with that theory. So I kind of dismiss it. Now up here, there's a lot of plaster work. That's because in older photos, you can see that there were little vents that went down behind there. It was like maybe a 2 or 3 inch difference between where the wall was, and there were a couple of holes that went down. Now, those will be very important when we discuss how the gases in this particular section were interacting with the gases in the area I like to call the condensation chamber or the Grand Gallery. But they have sealed them off. Also, one other thing that they sealed off, I guess I'm going to go and find that other picture while I'm talking about it, is hang on, I'm sorry. Play some like Jeopardy music. Dun 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 dun. Come on, I had that photo. All right, we'll find another copy of it later.
Don't worry about it, Angel. We're not in a rush.
These, just so that people can see, are the websites I acquired the photos from, because I'm not out to try to hide where I acquired these things. You can also read, you're welcome to, their interpretation of what they believe they are showing you photos of. But I think the photos are photos. Now, I PDF'd all my locations of all my photos, just so that you or anybody can go back and look at them and try to see what rationale they put behind it. Trying to see if I can't find a photo that shows what I was talking about. All right, well, we'll just continue along. I'm going to skip the PDFs because they're just re-images of the photos. And you can see some of these photos we've already looked at, even though they're technically drawings. This right here is of the 3rd of the largest pyramids. This is the one that Artis actually pointed out to me. I was looking for this opening for a very long time until he pointed it out to me. And you notice it's on a smooth spot here where something could be rest up against the structure at some point, as opposed to over here where it's unsmooth, and if something was to rest up against it, you couldn't get a good seal. I don't think they need a like airtight seal, but they did need a seal in order to extract the harvest out of the structure, and this is the perfect spot to do it. And I'm thankful that there is an opening there. I don't have to make it up. You can see the way this is designed, that something, they had a false flooring so that something could be up here and would be able to excavate or extract the harvest out of the structure from this location. And we'll get into what that harvest was as we go down, as we extend into the system. Now, these rocks may or may not have been there. It's not really relevant to the function. However, I do think over time these fell and were located there, which is kind of weird because they're kind of teetering, and they may have been there the whole time. That is less relevant to me than the fact that this is the extraction point, and that's a smooth area, and it is in a spot where it's in the perfect spot, and we'll get into the elevations of that and how it was working. This denotes that where the pyramid is technically, geographically, the center of the landmass, 30 degrees, 31 degrees. The pyramid itself technically sits at 29.9792458 and 31.1342 degrees, as you can see from my noting up there. But a rough guesstimate is 3130. That's the center of the landmass. So this structure was put at the exact center of the landmass. So these people knew something that, well, they weren't as dumb as we want to let them up to be. I have this, although I don't agree with most of it. Like the Great Pyramid does not have any topping on it like that. Well, that's my biggest gripe is they like to add things that don't exist because it was, it's part of the dogma. Chris Dunn, he's very much into this. This denotes the hole in the Grand Gallery that they have since filled over with a piece of metal shaped and made to look like the same rock that's in the room. So if you don't walk back there and walk on it, you won't realize it's a chunk of metal instead of rock. That's an out of sight, out of mind thing. They don't want to let you know that there was a hole in the floor of the combustion chamber, like what they like to call the king's chamber. Let's see. Skip that one, skip that one, skip that one. We're over there. Let's get to another good picture. That is a poor, actually, it's not a poor picture. This is one of Bren Forrester's pictures. This was taken off of his right there, Lost Ancient High Tech, blah, blah, blah. And you're welcome to look at it. What I stopped here to show you is you can see the roof line. This, I got to tell you where this is. This is what they like to call the dead end shaft, which is located down in the subterranean chamber. It's 53 feet that protrudes off into the wall. They have no idea why or where. But what I stopped this one for is to show you that the roof line of this, you can see there, A, it isn't level. B, it's ribbed. You can see the ribbing. It goes in, up, in, up, in, up, in, up. I have better videos that show it. You can also see on the floor line where there are piles of dirt at a pretty
One. Well, I don't know what happened. Angel disappeared, and then it said the hangout had ended, so we've had to come back.
Google.
But Angel's going to talk now.
Well, what I was trying to show photos because it is much easier for someone to see when I say something outlandish, like a space alien landed on the moon. If I show you a picture of a space alien waving from the moon. In this case, unfortunately, my belief is that many, many, many people have the belief that they were taught in school and all the documentaries they watch about how the Great Giza Pyramid is a tomb, a monument to some dead pharaoh guy, and how all the other pyramids are all for different people and blah, 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 blah. I don't believe any of that. I think it's all hogwash. In fact, I will argue with most people, and I'm probably one of the few people who can argue it, that there isn't only one pyramid upon the surface of the earth. because pyramid means fire in the middle. And to my knowledge, to this date, I have only found one that represents that particular definition. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't lots of things out there that aren't monolithic structures, and they aren't all impressive, and they aren't all old, and many of them, as Bren Forrester and other people, lots of people point out that they are hiding. They are purposely going out to hide, burying it over with dirt, making it out of sight, out of mind, because they don't want to rewrite history. They don't want to say, historians may have gotten it wrong. And I really think historians have gotten it wrong. And I think the evidence is there for people who are willing to actually observe it and see and look at the structure with new eyes. And you will see that I can't at this point. I mean, half a decade ago, I thought like maybe I was teetering and on the fringe theory, and hence, I got my tinfoil hat. Well, I don't need my tinfoil hat because I think I'm pretty dead on. And physical science agrees with me. And anybody who wants to prove me wrong, that's great. I'd love to build one of these backyard tabletop. I think it probably need more like a small farm lot in order to get it to properly work with all the natural reactions. And the reason it's so spread out is because, nature has variances, but they're minute. And by spreading them out, you can make those minute variances more dramatic. I'm trying to think of an example. I guess if you had a school hallway and you told all the students to stand on one side of the hallway and one student to stand on the other side, no matter what's going to happen, the area where all the students are standing is going to raise in temperature because the body temperature, and you can measure that. It's a measurable thing, and these are the things where it's the variances, the small variances, that heat will start to dissipate down the hallway. Now that's just nature doing that. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to fabricate it. There are no pieces that I need to add. That's just nature. Well, this particular structure, these structures, the whole plateau was engineered in such a way that the variances of nature do work. And there are tricks of nature that we play with, the parlor tricks. Lord Kelvin drop generator is one of them that I like to point out. Wimshurst generator, all these little things where we play with static electricity to do parlor tricks, but not actually get any efficiency out of it. And I love to point out how, where is it? I keep it so it's easily addressed, and now I can't find it. This little toy right here, a solar panel. There it is, a solar panel with a USB port. If I had handed this to you 2 decades ago, the only thing you could do with it is turn on this really cool light. Here we go, really cool light right there. And there's a way to turn on a light right here to make a little flashlight. There it is. Boop. May not have enough battery. It's not turning on right now. But either way, but it wouldn't do anything else for you. The cell phones of the time, they were called brick cell phones, and they took way more wattage to charge than this could output. And you could probably get plug it into there and get like a 5 minutes worth of a charge, which would last for a 30-second phone call. The efficiency wasn't there. Now today we have cell phones, these things. Turn it off so I don't reveal any information. These little black mirrors that my current day cell phone, iPhone 15, current one, will last about 2 days on a charge. Quite amazing. And I can charge it with this little toy right here. So the minute powers of today would have been insignificant to people a decade or more ago. They would have seen as like, what can you do with that much electricity? Before LEDs were invented and you had to use light bulbs and flashlights, we had to use a lot of power to get a result. Nowadays, we can use an LED on a something, and that LED can last days in some cases because they are much more energy efficient. This particular structure was designed to deal with the minute variances in nature to get work done. I think that people should really, I would love to see some science student somewhere, homeschool student, somebody build this in whole or in part and get an A because of how it toys with nature. If somebody built a Wimshurst generator, you know what a Wimshurst generator is? Or am I just throwing words out?
Explain it then.
A Wimshurst generator, I think it's easier to show it if I can find one. While I'm talking to you, I'm going to go onto YouTube and see if I can't pull one up, and then I can do a screen share. But what it is, H-U-R-S-T, Wimshurst machine, I guess is what they like to call it. And let's come over here, and I'm going to try to do a present, send, present that, start. All right, let me go back to this page. So here it is. It's pretty much, oh, this Rimstar guy, he's great.
Why do people still read books to get smarter?
Turns out, skip the commercial. Down to that. Come on, keep playing.
We don't see. Oh, hang on. It's coming now.
Okay. What it basically is it's a wheel with, I think it's a dozen metal plates or more, and it works on the inconsistencies of nature, is the way I'm going to word it.
Machine works. For those who aren't familiar with it, a Wimshurst machine is an electrostatic machine that produces a high voltage and is often used for making sparks. But I've powered many things with it over the years, such as a Corona motor, Franklin.
Okay, so it exists, it works, I don't have to make it up. It's using functions of nature, and you can get little sparks out of it. And you're pulling this electricity out of thin air. I like to stress that. It's pulling it out of thin air. And because as Tesla said, there's energy around us all over the place. If you've ever dried your linens, when you pull it out of the dryer and you get that little spark of static electricity, these are things that's around us all over, but we ignore them because we see them as an annoyance, and you don't realize the potential of collecting all this static electricity and actually using it. Now, I'm not saying in any way that the pyramid was collecting static electricity. Well, I guess it was. The surface of it was collecting static electricity. But I think that electricity was utilized within the system to do work. Not like a dozen people showed up and punched time card. I'm talking work like having, it's hard to explain when I'm, in science, if you take a water and you raise it 1 degree Celsius, that is work. You have done something to change the state, the energy, the whatever the scenario is. If you get water and you boil it, that's a lot of work. There's energy being put in, and the water is changing its state from liquid to gas. That is work. In the scientific world, that is work. Now, in the regular world, work is where you punch a time clock. But that's not what I'm referring to. I'm looking at the physical science, the engineers, the people out there that actually comprehend your Mensa people, your homeschool students, somebody who understands more than like, hey, the Pokemon comes out of a ball and you throw it at something and you can make it shoot fire and Charizard, and that's what our kids are taught today is blobble. I don't even know what to call it. It's you have a worthless facts about things that don't matter. Your favorite sports team, who we remember, are taught things that never even occurred. Gulf of Tonkin incident, all sorts of things that it doesn't matter. I'm going off the sidetrack. Realign me. Ask me a question. Do something to get me back on track. Did you fall asleep? Are we still on the
No,
phone?
just that you've moved screens now. You're on the outside. Can you present yourself?
I can I
That's
present
very
my
funny.
I don't know how to present my does this work? Photos work, Kufu. I don't know how to present myself. Window.
Yes, we don't know how to play on this Hangout.
I haven't actually, in fact, I installed the app just for this. I don't actually utilize it. Let's see, does this
It's
give
just that
me,
you're on the left-hand screen. It's 3 screens.
don't you control that?
I don't know how to do it. Hang on.
I have an option to remove the tile. I don't know what it'll do, but I don't know if it's that good. Oh yeah, that's not what I wanted. How about now?
No.
I don't have an exact answer for you, but I'm willing to experiment.
We've got Angel back in the middle now. It's better when you're in the middle of 2 Karens.
It could be taken the wrong way. But all right, so where was I last? We got sidetracked now, and I've lost track.
Said to ask a question because it's just like.
Go ahead, ask me a question. Give me a direction to go.
Well, you know, like you're saying, piles of dirt, but in there you can see loads of writing. Like these people couldn't help but put comments in there for what?
Well, let's say you wandered down into a cave you went to the shoreline and you found a cave and you wandered into the cave and you're there with
It's not something they usually show you, is it? Is all the signatures, like people writing on the walls? Were they trying to tell you something?
You've never been to the top of a hill or something, and up there is a bunch of people where they scribbled their name and stuff like that just to say that they were here, because kind of like how dogs like to piss on the fire pole. Humans like.
What I'm saying is they don't usually show you all the signatures, do they? You don't often see that part of it.
I think most of those
I was here.
have been cleaned off. I don't. If you look at images and photos current day of the areas, those signatures are not prevalent. I think they've been washed, rinsed, scrubbed, chiseled off. I don't know, but they're not there. But they were there. They were there in the photos, and why they were there is because people like to mark their territory. Again, you can go to the top of the Great Giza Pyramid, and somewhere up on the top of the Great Giza Pyramid, I think is J.P. Hancock. I think that's the initials, which happened to be Graham Hancock's father. And he had scribbled his name up on the top of the structure a decade or two before Graham Hancock ever got up there. But lots of people have scribbled their name up there. Nowadays, you're not allowed to go up there. A, because if you fall off of there, you could probably sue somebody. B, they don't want you to be in a static electricity, well, that's my assumptions. They don't want you to be in a static electric bubble and realize, hey, I'm on the top of a big Van de Graaff generator. And C, they don't want vandalism.
No, they've hidden up what it is, but it's had lots of dirt in it. So how did that get in there? Just blew in over the years.
The dirt would have been brought in with the water over the ages, because water has dirt in it. You take water and you boil it.
So it'd been going for quite a while then.
I believe it was going for a quite a while, and which is, I believe the scarring that's within the structure shows that it was functioning for a while. How long? I'd be glad to bicker with somebody of how long it was actually in function, but they have to first realize that it was functioning. And before they can realize it was functioning, they need to understand the system. And once you see that, it's kind of hard to say, no, it didn't work, when I can show you, well, then how did all these marks get here? How did all those marks get here? How did this, what does it, and they'll tell you, oh, they're people's handprints and this, and they'll come up with lots of stories that all go back to and rest upon the tomb dogma. But I have long since dismissed the tomb dogma. I'm past that. It would be very hard for anybody to give me electroshock therapy or a toothpick lobotomy. You're familiar with those? And convince me that this was ever a tomb. I'm well past that. I'm at this point, I'm functioning. My focus is
It's a machine.
Actually understanding the physical science behind it to recreate it. I'm long past the tomb bit. That long past that.
No, because you make videos saying it's a machine.
It is a machine, and even if somebody wants to think it's a tomb, pretend this is the Great Giza Pyramid. Okay, this is the Great Giza Pyramid. This is the other one. This is the third one, and this is the configuration. Okay, now boof. Now pretend we're talking about a completely different thing. It's no longer the Great Giza Pyramid, but the configuration is identical. And I will show you, when you apply certain features of nature, what occurs within it. Water runs downhill, gases go uphill. I don't have to make anything up. I don't have to fabricate pieces and parts. I'm just showing you how the system functioned, or how the system will function if you allow nature to run its course. Just like a water lock would, just like a Van de Graaff generator would. All these things function, but when you sit there and you stare at it all by itself, it does nothing until you actually see it in motion, until you understand the environment it was in and the environment surrounding it. Then it's very hard to dismiss what it actually did. But it's easy to dismiss it because it's right now sitting in the middle of the desert. There's no water anywhere near it. Oh, well, the exception. There's water in the area they like to call the Osiris shaft, well down deep into it. And every time they pump it out, it keeps refilling. Why? Because it's below the water table, and the natural water will refill it. Now, I believe at the time the Nile was an active river, and right up against it, and the water table may have even climbed up a bit, but that's not as relevant as the fact that the area up here would have been an aquifer, and that would have been the source of water that ran this whole thing. Without a source of water, this would make no sense or do nothing. And I don't have to fabricate where the source of water came. It already exists. It's called the tomb. In fact, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to look at the Great Giza Plateau. I'm going to try this and see if it works. Hopefully it won't mess up your screen. All right. You got me?
Yeah, we're 4 screens. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. So let's lose this.
Wait a second. It's just loading it up.
Okay.
You're on.
I'm on. Okay, so this area up here, they already gave it a name, Tomb of the Birds. Now, it doesn't look very much like there, but when you actually walk up there and walk around it, there is a little structure there. It's nothing much of a structure. In fact, a lot of people don't even take the time to put it on the tourist route. But if you actually take the time to go up there, in fact, there's a documentary called, in fact, let's see if I can pull it up real quick, YouTube, and it's called The Lost Caves of Giza. The Lost Caves of Giza. See if I can find it real quick. Forbidden technology. Nope, everything else is coming. They may have taken it off because it hit home. I'm not sure. Forbidden under Nile. Discover inside. Nope, it's gone. Well, good thing I have it somewhere on I downloaded it. But at the time, some people took some basically scuba gear, because you're going into a cave system that's covered in guano and guano is bat poop. And it's very hard to breathe in there. And they were able to go down there, and they were able to walk for, they said, about half a mile underground before they got tired and went back. There is a cave system under the plateau. Now, these are in addition to the conduits, the squared conduits. This is the cave system. You can actually see how the walls are, a cave. It's not a finished wall like the conduits. But that would have been your source of water. And that is at an elevation of approximately 80 feet. Doesn't show it on this little thing, but it's 80 feet. This is a higher elevation. This little restaurant here looks down upon the plateau. In fact, we may be able to tell the elevation if we drop a little Google guy here. You can see that, if it works for me, well, you really can't tell, but yeah, you can. That is up. That is going uphill. And that is going downhill. So water would come up out of there and would run downhill onto the plateau. Now, when it ran downhill, it does everything I suggest it does. It saturated this system and made it work. And it saturated the pools outside of here. And the other pool, the only other spot that it would saturate would be, this is not zooming in very well. Give me a second here. Boop, 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 boop. Still not zooming in. It should refresh this graphics, but there is a pool out here. I might be able to drop a Google guy and, oh, you know why it's not doing it? Because I zoomed in on the screen, not on the map. This is not doing what I want it to do. I'm zoomed in on the screen, not on the map. And for that reason,
Everything's always so complicated, isn't it, Angel?
It is. It is not letting me grab my Google guy. Let me refresh the screen here. See if that gives me any. See how my screen is big? Let me just close it and reopen it. It'll probably mess things up. Stop sharing. Close that window. And then open it up again. And represent it.
It's not on our screen at the moment. Oh, there it comes.
All right, so now we're looking at this screen, right? Yeah. Okay, so when if I take my little Google guy, lose this off the bottom corner here, and drop them about there. Is that working? I don't see it on my screen. You know what? I'm sharing the
I
wrong
don't think
Google.
it's working.
I'm on a different screen. This is what, so let me try this.
I think I sussed it out. I've tapped my speakers down on the computer and it might be all right now. You can hear me, can't you?
Oh, yeah, much better without an echo. I don't know how that happened. I just completely, I don't even know where I am. I'm looking at a picture. That's not even the screen you're looking at. All right. I've done something horrible. Give me a second while I recuperate.
It's okay, Angel. Don't worry.
Where the heck is it? There it is. All right. Now I've got it.
Hooray!
All right. So right up here, it's not walking. Come on. Oh, I'm on a photograph. I can't. somehow I can get to here. I've got photos of it. So there's a way to get my little Google guy there. I just have to figure out how to do it. See how I can't drop it right here? Oh, yes, I can. There we go. They showed up. I know I've been there before, so I can do it again. So here we go. That's not me. This is the area I speak of. It is a pool outside the entrance. See? There's the entrance. Pay your ticket, go inside. And this right here over I have where there was an entrance, a little shaft that went down under the surface. Maybe he's standing on it. I don't know. But there was an opening that went down under the ground. This would have been filled, this pool would fill with liquid just outside of the entrance, and that would be the I don't know the scientific name for it, but it would be the pull of the energy that's in here needs a place to go to, the potential. It needs to have the potential to get somewhere. If it doesn't have the potential, it can't build up energy. Just like the Wimshurst generator, you have to have the potential to be able to jump to the other side, to build up the energy to jump to the other side. And over here is the right here is the area I was talking about where they milked the, I believe it to be gases, out of the system. And again, it's in the perfect spot and at the perfect elevation. The elevation is more important. It could have been on the back, it could have been on the side. That happens to be where it is. But the elevation is what dictates what it was doing, because the pressures within the system, and I don't know if that's gonna, it did. Am I still in the center?
Yep, you are.
Good. It's the pressures that would dictate within here, the liquids within here, they can't go up unless they're a gas. They can't go down unless there's a way for it to get down. But they maintain their pressure across the system, and over here, they are pooled within the structure. There's a whole lot more underneath here. There's like 2 or 3 levels, and it goes down, and there's a bunch of junk in here. But what's important is the harvest, which is pooled within here, is milked out of the system by putting something against that smooth spot, and adding a negative pressure would pull the gases out. It would pull the gases up the straw, down the conduit, and out that particular hole on the side. That would be how they milked the harvest, whatever was one of their goals, out of here. Now, the other one, I believe, is actually heavy water, something that today most people don't even comprehend, know about, or understand. But it is still, it exists. It's on the, I'd say it's on the periodic table, but it's on the college level periodic table. It's not on the elementary school periodic table. And that may have been harvested out this conduit, the one that actually led out to the front that we were looking at. However, I'm not sure that's the extraction point for it. And I'm still looking to see if there's something that looks more feasible. But till now, the worst case is it's pooled and maintained within the system, and they don't do anything with it. But I don't believe that. I believe they would have pooled it and utilized it, but I don't know where yet. But
you know, when you said that the water went in through the pipe and then it spilled out with the V bit on the top, the brickwork, which pyramid's that on?
The what picture we were looking at earlier?
You know, the one with the V-shaped bit in the rocks, and then you said the water spilled out there, but it went in next to it in a little hole.
This one.
Yes. Which one's that on then? Where's that in height on the
That
pyramids?
is the Great Giza Pyramid. That is, let's see if I can't use the Google guy to actually show people here. Give me a second. I'm going to try this again. This is a little bit of a learning curve for me too, because I've not actually played with this too much. All right, where are we?
We haven't used this in ages, have we, Google Hangouts?
Nope. All right, so
We used to use it all the time, and it used to be so easy. But anyway, let's carry on.
you got my screen? You can see it there?
It's coming. It says that's it. Yes, now.
All right, so if we take a Google guy and we drop him right there. Right there is the area we're discussing. See it?
Right, yeah.
Now it'd be those photos we're taking at elevation, either with a scaffolding, chopper, or drone. But they look, you can see me still? I'm making hand gestures. They would look down into the
Can I
system.
say something to you very quickly? I'm hoping that George is going to find the photographs. George, Ellie's boyfriend, said that when he was younger, he went there and he climbed up the pyramids.
I would love those photographs and or videos.
Thing is, there'll be photographs, and they're probably from, say, the late 90s or something. I've asked him for them, but
That's better. That's before they did a bunch of the repairs they did in the earlier 2000s.
he said he walked up them. He was a kid.
Well, back in those days, you were kind of allowed to. Since then, they've, cracked down on stuff because they, A, don't want to get sued, B, hang on, clicked on the wrong thing, got a commercial. Anyway, so that let me explain what that area does. When I explain what that area does, it might help understand why it's shaped the way it is. When we take the Great Giza Pyramid and we look at the entrance. Okay, you take that as the entrance, and this is the descending shaft. All right. They say this was loosely filled with rocks. And I don't have a big deal with that because, in my view, the gases are going to be fighting their way out and the water is going to be fighting its way in. And because of that, A, you're going to get some dirt. You're going to get bug carcasses. You're going to get fish scales. You're going to get all the things they find within the structure that I pointed out down there, all that loose-fitting dirt. That came in because there are impurities in the water that come in. And as the water gets, I'm going to use the word boiled off, but they're really electrolyzing it, which is kind of like boiling, where you're basically separating it into its respective gases. And what's left are the impurities. And those impurities are what we were looking at down there in the subterranean chamber, what levels the floor. Now, on the inside, there's the shaft that comes up and you got your hallway and your grand gallery. And believe me, this is nowhere near to scale. But they wanted to maintain the water level so it would be just below the floor line of the chamber that goes into the ark chamber, what they like to call the Queen's Chamber. Okay, Queen's Chamber over there. And this is what they like to call the Grand Gallery. I'm just going to go with their name so people can follow. They wanted to make sure that the liquid doesn't come in and add too much. Otherwise, it would fill which I didn't draw here, the shaft that goes, what they like to call the well shaft. It wouldn't fill the well shaft and spill into here or flood the Queen's Chamber. They wanted to maintain it at an elevation right down here. And in order to do that, if it built up too much pressure in here, that pressure would be alleviated through that one particular hole I was suggesting to the side. That way, too much pressure couldn't build up, because too much pressure building up there would raise the water level of the water within the structure, which would pollute the structure and cause the structure not to function properly. But by this gas, when it builds up too much pressure, having a relief valve, which is what that conduit is, it made sure that the gas pressures within here, and hence the water pressure, because the gases would be pushing on the water, would never achieve a pressure enough to raise the water to flood the system. That is the pressure valve. Same thing you have on a steam engine or on your hot water heater. There's a pressure valve that if it gets too much pressure, it blows. That's what that particular valve was. Now, the loose fitting rocks would do a good job of maintaining pressure and letting the gases out and the water in, but it wasn't perfect. And they needed it to be perfect. And that is what that valve, that opening on the side of this that I showed you, is. It's there. I don't have to make it up. What I'd like to do is get some 15-year-old, skinny 15-year-old to crawl in there with a GoPro or something and follow it to its end and see if it's a sealed conduit, just like the dead end shaft and the niche in the Queen's chamber, the niche in the wall, or if it goes to an opening, or if there are cracks, or if there are openings. Because if there are, and we're able to put some air pressure in there and see where it comes out, it will probably come out where I suggested, on the back side of that spillway. And that would allow the gases, when they build up within that spillway, to relieve their pressure so that they don't flood the system. And it would also allow the waters a sure way in. Actually, the sure way in is they're going to flow through the rocks. Gravity will let the waters on the outside of the system go down through the rocks into the system. The rocks would filter out impurities, fish, sticks, floating things, logs. It won't filter out bug guts, seeds, shells, dirt, things that are in the water, the impurities in the water. All those impurities are found in several locations within the structure. A majority of them are found on the floor of the subterranean chamber, the floor of the hallway and such of the Queen's chamber, and we find some remnants of the seeds and the shells and the dust up above the King's chamber, what they like to call the relieving chambers. Now, I believe the seeds and the shells and the dust that are found up above the King's chamber and the relieving chambers are evidence of the updraft of the hydrogen gas, which would be coming out of the grand gallery through the holes in the southern wall up into the top there, where when the gases come into that room and they're no longer under pressure and they hit the larger volume room, the gases slow down, the impurities fall out of the gas, and that's why we find seeds and shells and dust up there in the
Can I
top.
ask you something? Why didn't they ever clean the piles of dirt away? Because they couldn't get in there to do it.
Are you saying why didn't current day people clean the piles of dirt
Well,
away?
you said that there's scales in there, there's bits of fish, there's piles of dirt. Why didn't they clean that out? Just asking.
I don't believe they would have had any reason to. The system was functioning with that there. The impurities would just continue to pile onto the floor. They didn't present any hindrance to the function of the system. They just, nature would have brought them in and they would have settled out of the system and they would just keep piling and piling and piling and piling. Now, in the subterranean chamber, the fins, the area they like to call the fins, were covered with rocks, things like the size of human heads. That would not have been impurities in the water. Those were put there to protect the fins because that's communication. Also, the dirt and stuff, the debris within the conduit of the Queen's chamber is the same way, because within the Queen's chamber, that conduit also has communication. So does the niche. And again, the communication makes no sense to you if you don't understand the flow and function of the system. Once you understand the flow and the function of the system, it is denoting. In fact, let me go grab something.
Just to say that your picture's on the left again.
I don't have much control over that.
Sorry, just saying.
I found one image I wanted to show you. I'll be right back. I'm just grabbing some images. Some of them that used to be on my Google website, but like I said, Google likes to randomly decide that an image or two is copyrighted and they take it off. So, this is the Queen's Chamber. I agree with this image in many ways. There's one or two imperfections that I think. Did I lose you? You just made a funny noise. Oh, it says our call ends in 15 minutes. So there is a limit. Group calls have a limit of 1 hour. Okay, so now we know the answer. Right here. This is not a mistake. The way this is squared, this was not somebody digging in there looking for a treasure. Now, there are images that they show that somebody hypothetically dug deeper into here, and that's where all that dirt came from, but that's not reality because we've already excavated all this dirt, and it already goes to the back. You can climb, well, you can't climb back there. They've put like a little gate right here, but you used to be able to climb back there. Probably somebody like Bren Forrester who can grease some wheels can climb into there and can walk back there and tap on the rock. It is solid. It is squared. It is in a shape that is, well, I'm going to say unique. And when you marry these edges, in fact, the person who did this was nice enough to show how they line up with the niches and the walls of the niches, because they are trying to show you that what they were looking for is a drip of water, I've already explained, which would come down the back edge of this wall, and its glory spot would be to drip right there. When it drips right there, that water, which contains static on the surface of the water as it's falling down that area, that static electricity, nature is going to make it release and go somewhere. Nature did this. Nature does this. That somewhere, its goal, its potential is the conduit to the north side, but even though that's the better potential, that's where the true short to ground is, it deviates to the south side, which is where they find the arcing in the wall, and they found the conduit and they drilled through and blah, 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 and all the rest of the history. This is the area, the lower section I was trying to point out to you. This is where we were looking at the photos earlier of how they're done. This is the bottom of the well shaft. This is the dead end shaft, which it really doesn't protrude out there and continue. But again, I would say all these photos used to be on my website, but as you found, this photo, which was on my website, my Google website, is now missing. Thank you, Google. But I will re-find it and re-put it up there. I don't know, maybe I'll watermark it or something with my name so that it doesn't align with the original image and they can't say it's copyrighted. I don't know, they could still say it's copyrighted. I don't know how they do it, if it's a human or the computer. But I have taken my time to try to give everyone access to images so that they can look at them and try to call my bluff. Because at this point, I'm well beyond the point where somebody can call my bluff, because I'm not making anything up. Nothing I'm saying is fabricated. I'm just pointing out the evidence, pointing out the scarring of the fact that the system at some point was functioning, and teaching people basic physical science. These people had a larger grasp of the elements and play and how they work than we did up until a century and a half, 2 centuries ago. And it is quite possible that they still, this machine up here will reveal a secret that we today don't realize or understand. This system is in a negative pressure because as things are condensating, it's causing a negative pressure, and they're basically cool, I'd say in the 60, 70 degrees. We are going to find that there could be an element, compound technically, that is stable at a negative pressure and is basically made of hydrogen, oxygen, and even potentially ammonia. Why do I say ammonia? Because I'm not ignorant to the fact that the conduit that comes in from this side right here, the inlet to the system, the one that we were looking at the picture, has the fan in it today, is pulling in air. It's not pulling in oxygen. It's pulling in air. And air is 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% a bunch of other stuff. Primarily, and one of the reactions is going to be water. Hydrogen and oxygen blend together, become water. But there's also a large presence of nitrogen. 78% of the air coming in is nitrogen. Now, it may leak that nitrogen off or ignore it or not do it, but nitrogen and hydrogen blend together to become ammonia. They blend together to become ammonia in a negative atmospheric state. That is how we today make ammonia. It has to be at a negative pressure in order to properly work. So it is quite possible that this structure may have been utilizing ammonia. However, one big thing there is you don't smell ammonia. In the one that Jeff Durham, whatever the guy that Land of Chem guy, it is very relevant. The one he's working on, the one that has, really quick, it comes in and it has the one room, and then off of here it has a second room, a bad drawing there, and then off of there there's another one, and there's an outlet, and blah blah. And I think they call it the red pyramid, the bent pyramid, whatever one it is. I'm going to focus more on that. But in that particular structure is a very, very, very prominent smell, odor of ammonia. That's because that structure, and I don't think he's wrong, I just think he's embellishing too much, is where they were allowing composting, basic composting. You put a slurry of food and vegetables and stuff in there, not meat, vegetables and fruits and vegetables, and you shove them in there. It will compost. It will deteriorate, ammonia is formed, and it will basically turn into fertilizer / good dirt. That is nature. People do that all the time. They have composting things. You can look up on YouTube how to compost. That particular structure that he's focusing on was doing composting. One of the side effects of composting, I don't know if you've ever filled your water pot too much, your garden water too much, and not allow it to leak, but you spill the water off and you get that nasty ammonia smell. Nature does that all by itself. There's no rocket science to it. That is what that structure was doing. Now, he wants to embellish a 75-foot rod that goes down there and adds pressure. But I'll tell you what, in my backyard, I have a composting pile. And all I do is open the top of it, throw stuff in there. And at the beginning of the year when I'm ready to do my gardening, I open the bottom of it and pull the dirt out, and stuff inside of it falls down to allow for more dirt. And I keep doing that until I reach like a banana peel or something that hasn't quite deteriorated yet. And I know I've pulled as much as I can pull out for this season. And then I throw more stuff in it and it deteriorates and stuff. But the whole time it's doing that, the reason I have it at the back of the yard is because it has a nasty ammonia smell. That is nature doing that. That is just nature. And he's dead on what they're doing. He's not dead on how they're doing it, because he wants to picture a 75-foot plunger to add pressure. Well, adding pressure just causes the reaction to act quicker. If I wanted to, I could take my stuff with all the banana peels, I could take it out, put it in a box, and put it under pressure, and it would happen quicker. But it doesn't have to do that. Nature will do it regardless of pressure or not pressure. And he's so close that he sees and understands what's going on, but he wants to add features that we do today as a catalyst to enhance, to speed up the system. But you don't have to do that. If you're patient, if we have some patience, nature will do it all by itself. And these are the little things. What I'm saying on here, this thing may have not have been blowing out its yield, its harvest like there's no tomorrow. It may have been that every couple of months they get a few cubic meters of whatever the harvest is. I don't know the speed. I would love to talk to somebody who actually understands what's going on and actually get to the bottom of it. And with time, and unless I wind up on the other side of the dirt, with time, I will come to those conclusions. I will get those answers. I will speak to somebody who actually can talk to me about this. And I know I told you this, well, I was living in California a decade ago. I went to UCLA. Prominent people, next to Berkeley and other places. It's one of the brainiacs centers of the world. And I sat there, the same people who taken a pumpkin during Halloween and drop it in liquid nitrogen and drop it off the side of the building to watch it explode, because like they're all, they can do things with their expensive toys. And I sat down and I started to explain to them about the system. And I'm going and they're following me and everything is good. And then all of a sudden somebody says, hey, that looks like the pyramid. And then somebody chimed in, oh yeah, I like how it has the star alignment. Somebody else chimed in about this and all of a sudden I lost them to the tomb dogma, which is why I went with before, where I said, this is the Great Giza Pyramid. Now, it's no longer the Great Giza Pyramid, but it's configured exactly the same way. Let's talk about what physical science nature would do within this particular construction with all the features that are there. But if you pretend it's not the Great Giza Pyramid, your mind will let you see what's actually occurring instead of the tomb dogma, which is ingrained in your gray matter. And that is the separation I'm trying to get people to do, is and why I probably need to eventually get a physical model so people can't say it wouldn't do that. Well, if I built you a Wimshurst generator, I said if I spin it, it'll make sparks. It wouldn't do that. Well, if I spin it and it makes sparks, it'd be like, oh, it does do that. Well, I'm telling you, this does do what I suggest it will do. I don't have to make anything up. It's physical science. It's just the problem is people are so ingrained in the tomb dogma, they're unwilling to accept physical science. They're unwilling to see it as anything other than what it is. They're unwilling to see it as anything other than a monument to a dead guy. And I understand my hurdles. I understand my cognitive dissonance that I have to deal with people. The normalcy bias, all that stuff. The normalcy bias is it's a tomb. My scenario is it's not a tomb. It's anything other than a tomb. And allowing people to see what it does and understand how it's reacting and understand how physical science plays within it, maybe somebody somewhere will eventually say, hey, it's not a tomb. And that's the people I'm looking for. Somebody will say, hey, it's not a tomb. Somebody will help me build a physical model in whole or in part, because you can build parts of it. We can build just the subterranean chamber right here. Just set that up and just have it reaction going and just see what it does. And then expand on the system, build it up, make it exactly what it is. Because pieces of it are fine. They will show function. There's no way this won't function. In fact, if you look at the bottom there, which I didn't get to the photos, there's evidence of the water line, the water levels within there, and they marry what I'm suggesting nature would do, because the water level is never going to exceed above the roof line of that hallway, because water won't go up. It's got gas in there. Water cannot fill that because it's got gas, and gravity will keep it at a lower level. Even if there's
I suppose you said it's, what is it? Heavy water.
Well, eventually heavy water. Anytime you have water, anytime you can take a glass of water, if you electrolyze it, if you boil it, even if you just put it on your stove and boil it, the remaining water will be a higher concentration of heavy water than it started with, because in nature, the weakest link breaks first, and heavy water boils at a slightly higher temperature than light water. So you'll be boiling off the light water, and what will remain is heavy water. In fact, there's a guy, Cody's Lab. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he does, he has a situation set up where he's using solar panels and battery banks and all this other stuff. And as energy goes into the battery and it comes out of the battery and into the battery and out of the battery and into the battery and out of the battery, more and more that battery bubbles. It's a liquid acid battery, and it will bubble. And as it's bubbling, the gases coming off of it are going to be hydrogen and oxygen. And more as you do it after a year or so, the water that's within the battery is going to be a higher and higher concentration of heavy water. There's no way to get around that. That is nature. That is nature 101. And he, in his particular scenario, took that water and had it tested to prove that there was a higher concentration of heavy water. It's again, it goes back to science 101. And heavy water is not something that you're ever...
This call's going to end. Hang on a second. So what we're learning is they only give you an hour and then they cut you off unless you buy it.
Yeah, it's amazing what our tax dollars pay for. Well, not your tax dollars, mine.
Well, Google is the globe, isn't it, unfortunately?
Well, Google, from what I understand, started with seed money from our CIA, my CIA. You guys have
MI5 or something.
Yeah, MI5 and Darby Hill or something like that.
Well, at least you're in the middle again, so that's good. Do you remember where you were talking?
No, but if you want to, we can grab it from anywhere.
Well, I've said this many times. You've maybe realised that even though the pyramids are on different levels, across the spectrum, they work the same between each other, even though they're different heights.
They work as well. They are at different heights, and their guts are all at an equivalent level, and that all being at an equivalent level is what lets them work together as a system. And it also lets you realize why they're shaped the way they're shaped when you understand what's occurring. Now, a lot of people know what condensation is. I'm sure half a dozen people go into their basement, although I understand in the UK you don't have basements. So it's hard to talk to people when they don't have basements. People in Florida don't have basements. People in California don't have basements. Cool. Well, the dampness is nature and condensation. It just occurs. The moisture could be coming out of the soil, the moisture, whatever it is. It's just.
So you said wine cellars, didn't you? When you look at a wine cellar.
Right. I was mentioning that because they're a basement. They're cool, and they're usually underground. That's why they call them a wine cellar. But this center structure was designed to collect condensation, and I don't know this because I don't have any heavy water to play with myself. It's expensive stuff. It's kind of like mercury. It's something that you don't just always come across all the time. But the way that the middle of the second structure is, the way that the middle structure is designed was to allow for condensation, and it is set up in such a way that its guts are below the floor line of there. Its guts are primarily below the physical ground level. And since this is elevated, all the internals in here are at a lower elevation. And again, I don't have heavy water to play with, and I don't even know if science has really toyed with this, but I'm assuming that the condensation that occurs within this structure is manipulated in such that the condensation is going to be more on the heavy water side than the light water side. And that could be because the liquids presented within the structure are getting more and more a concentration of heavy water because how the system is bleeding off the light water. As the system runs, the light water.
What you're saying is all the pyramids, they must be connected.
With these ones. I'm not saying all of them. Now, I am not opposed to, as we go on, finding out that the structures within the maybe 20, 30 mile radius of this particular plateau and these particular structures, they may be working in conjunction with it as time goes on. But I'm not going to push that as a, yes, they're definitely doing it yet. I think the bent pyramid, red pyramid, whichever one that Jeff is playing with, the Land of Chem guy, that one, I think stands, well, it doesn't completely stand alone, because as he even points out, there are one or two structures outside of it that do work, because when you're dealing with the stuff breaking down and decomposing and stuff, you're going to have side projects. You're going to have some.
Why did they have that in there, just asking? Or was that a way to get rid of some of the rubbish?
Well, if you take rubbish and you let it sit in a pile for a year, it becomes dirt. It's called, decomposing. It's just, nature does that. It decomposes. It turns back into dirt. That's why people have these things. They do them in their backyard. I mean, I'm sure I can. Hundreds and hundreds of people do it. It is not outside of norm for people to have compost.
That was put in there on purpose then, to get rid of the rubbish.
Well, I don't know if it really would get rid of it as much as it would make soil. When you put your, banana peels and your apple cores and your cherry, your pieces of your cherry stems and your cherry pits and all that stuff, and you put it into a pile, it will decompose. And what is done when it's done decomposing is soil that you can then take that has the nutrients and vitamins and minerals and stuff that are in those fruits and vegetables, and you can take that soil and mix it in with your topsoil, and it aids in the next year's harvest. So it is potentially possible that structure was designed solely for decomposing. It's a big, huge compost pile, but it doesn't need a 75-foot plunger to do its job. It just needs time. Compost piles take time. We can accent it, speed it up by putting it under pressure, but that is not a necessary thing. In commercial composting, we put it under pressure to speed up the reaction, but that is not necessary. Kind of like lighter fluid helps the fire burn, but it is not necessary. You can start a fire without lighter fluid. You can, there's things that can be done that we will add something to it as a catalyst to make it occur faster or more efficiently or blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean it won't occur if we don't add that catalyst. It will still.
There's just all these extra things that are there.
Where.
What I mean is, they even thought about getting rid of the rubbish.
Yes. Yeah. Have you never composted?
I'm not saying that, but I suppose I never thought about the pyramids were composting as well.
Well, not all. See, when you say the pyramids, I'm saying that particular
pyramid.
One, right. And this particular one is the only one that, if you really want to use the definition of pyramid being a fire in the middle, this is the only one that you're going to have a spark here every now and then and a fire up here where they're burning together. That's the combustion chamber. And that's the arc chamber. This is the only structure other than, and I still got my hopes up for the Bosnian pyramids. This is the only structure that I've come across that has this design of the internal guts, and the only one that I've found that could even potentially possibly be having a fire in the middle and an arc down here in the arc chamber. And nature will do that, and hence this is the only one that I can really honestly hold my hand up on the court of law and say that's a pyramid. Everything else is a monolithic structure, but where is the break line? What is the definition between what's a pyramid and what's a big pile of rock? Because there are big piles of rocks that may be monolithic, but they're not a pyramid.
Do you think there are things that have fallen down from inside the pyramid or have been pushed there somehow?
Well, there are things that we have damaged. We damaged the spillway where we put a grand step. We've damaged the area when you enter between the Grand Gallery and going in there, that there were, they say there were 3 sliding walls to keep the king's thing shape. I don't believe there were any sliding walls. I believe there were potentially 1 or 2 things that would allow the water to pool and allow gases, certain gases, to escape, condensate, and work their way out of that little area. And I have videos on that back a decade ago when I was just focusing on this structure, and there's not really more I need to append to them, because I think I got this structure pretty down. It was appending the other ones into the system is what's taken me half a decade, because I've had to learn. I didn't know about heavy water. I didn't go to college for heavy water and electricity and how to make a Van de Graaff generator and how to make a Wimshurst generator. I did, all this stuff I've learned over time. What would nature do? And the more I understand what would nature do, the more I understand that this was just utilizing all the quirks of nature to get work done, to perform a task. And I think it's a really cool one. And I think hopefully in a decade or 2, it'll be taught in school as, hey, this is a really old Mr. Wizard science project. And
I have to say though, Angel, when you think about it, you're almost like an engineer now, aren't you?
In this particular field, I'll go with that. In fact, I'd almost credit myself being an expert on the physical shape of the structure. In fact, I'd be willing, if somebody wants to show me where I've made a mistake, show me a picture, show me a video, show me something. I would love to correct my understanding view of the structure. Anything that somebody can show me which will correct me, because my goal is not to fabricate something. My goal is to come to the truth. My goal is to come to what this structure did and to show that our taught history is false. And as what's his name?
So why do you think they want to turn it into a burial chamber when it wasn't then? Why do you think they would do that?
Well, let's go back. I've touched on this, and I'll say it again. 0800 is when, 0814 supposedly is when we broke into the structure. We're talking 1600 years ago. Okay, if our timeline is correct, 1600 years ago. Even if it isn't correct, it was a long time ago. It was before I was born. And at that time, when the people went there and they observed
Hey, Angel, you're not that old, are you?
I'm not that old, but either way, when they first came across it, they were told a story of some pyramids and pharaohs, and the Egyptians had their own beliefs of what they thought it was, and it's great and wonderful. Even when Napoleon went there, he was fed a line of fabricated story based on what was the belief at the time. When Napoleon went there, we didn't know what heavy water was. When Napoleon went there, we didn't know what static electricity was. The word static electricity, I would love to find out when the word static electricity was appended to our vocabulary. I would love to find out when the word heavy water, in fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to find out when the word heavy water was appended to our dictionary. Because prior to those 2 terms being appended to our dictionary, this structure would have been a mystery. You need to know about static electricity, and you need to know about heavy water. Other than that, this whole structure makes no sense. If you don't understand that static electricity exists, it comes out of the wind. Wind will blow across. Take a piece of styrofoam and just wave it in the air, and then hold it against your head. Your hair will stand up on end, because the static electricity will be collected on the surface of the piece of styrofoam. I mean, you could do that. In fact, I should probably go get a piece of styrofoam the next time it cuts off and demonstrate that, because it is science 101. It is physical science. But again, we didn't understand just because it's static electricity and it can make your hair stand up on end, it was not seen as a potential energy source, because we didn't have anything that would ever be able to utilize such a minute amount of electricity.
Can I say something else, Angel? Maybe they had some different way of doing it, but someone the other day put a video out that the pyramids were like wireless. They were like a wireless internet.
Well, I'd like to see them other than just say that, expand on it and
There's a
give.
video. I meant to send it to you. I might have done. I don't know. I can't
That's okay.
remember now.
Well, a lot of people can say things, but if they don't back it on anything, they just say it like, "Oh, it was a transmission point." That's great. Chris Dunn says that it was he says it was a power plant. Well, I don't agree with him, because what he needs to add pieces, completely forget and ignore pieces, ignore this whole bottom part, and add pieces in order for it to do what he suggests. Well, those pieces aren't there, and you're ignoring the whole bottom part. So if you're ignoring the bottom part and adding pieces that aren't there, then that's not this structure that you're reverse engineering. You're using the shape of it, the size of it, pieces of it, but it's not this structure you're reverse engineering. And for people to say that I was a transmission point, that would also be great and wonderful, but they'd have to back it more than just saying it. They'd have to say, and I would love to see, I've seen lots of them, but the one you're speaking of, do they say how the energy was created? I mean, I'll tell you right now, static electricity all day long blows back and forth across this. And if it wasn't for the antenna that we currently have on the top of it, the outside of it would be acting as a Van de Graaff generator, the surface of a Van de Graaff generator. If you were allowed to walk on there, you get some little, 15-year-old girl with long blonde hair, her hair would be sticking up. Why? Because the static electricity would make it do it. I don't know if you've seen it at a science fair where they pull up some girl with long blonde thin hair to the front of the thing. They take a little Van de Graaff generator and she touches it and her hair stands up. Science 101. It happens. It's a feature of nature. That's what this structure was doing, is quarantining that static electricity. Now they utilize it within the system, so I don't think it's really a power plant. They don't send it anywhere. It's not transmitted, so I don't think it's transmitting it. But it is collecting it, and it is utilizing it. So they knew of it, and they knew of the potential of how to utilize it.
Can I just say, if they've got all this pipework system and tunnels underneath it, which are carrying water, gases, heavy water, and all that, couldn't they then put the pipes out to the other pyramids further down, and they're just doing other things?
That's why I'm suggesting, or I did plant the seed, that it is potential that the pyramids within like the 30-mile radius or something could potentially be utilizing parts of this. It is very possible that when push comes to shove and everything winds down, there is a hole right here, which I will show you on a Google map where it is if you want. In fact, let's do that. Let me pull up Google Maps while I'm talking. There is
Do you think that anything's been taken away though? Because you said that some things have been changed a bit, like they put steps up to get into somewhere else that weren't there. You know that there's been a couple of combustion places in there. Do you think they've taken some bits away that we're not, a bit behind, that so we would never known they existed, sort of thing?
At this point, if they took something away, they would have taken it away to make it more convenient for tourism. I don't think they took anything away to hide anything, because I don't think they understand what they have. Which goes back to the whole tomb story that, again, Napoleon, when he went there, he supposedly went there. He supposedly spent a night in there. He supposedly got up in the middle of the night and ran out of it because he was scared or something. But regardless, he went there. So did dozens of other people. King, what's his name, George, and Queen Elizabeth, they all sent people there. Hey, go get me, come back and write me a report about what's there. A, find me treasures because I want more money, but B, tell me what's there. And they come back and all they do is regurgitate what they were told. Now you can see my screen, right? I'm doing a sharing. Okay. So right here is a huge conduit. See it right there? Look at that. That thing is huge. Now there's a couple of other ones right there. And I'm going to suggest to you, when you look at it, let's just go really quick, that the water source is up here.
Would they have been just like that, Angel? Would they have had something on top of them?
Water. We'll get to that in a second. Water would come out here, would come downhill. Now, when we look at it, they put a road there, but it looks like the water would have come down here, I think would have circled around here, kind of like what that is, and would have come down, get that out of the way. And if you notice, you can go there with a Google guy. This right here is a pool. Okay. In fact, if we take a Google guy and drop it, we can drop it right there.
There's quite a few holes there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. You can see here, there is the edge. Yeah, it's this side. No, wait a second. No, it's this side. Here's those holes. See them? Right there.
Right.
Up here, okay. And you can see how this would have been a pool. Okay. Now the pool would have filled and spilled over. There's spots where it would fill and spill over, but the whole time the water had been working its way down the system, filling this, spilling over, filling this, spilling over. It eventually comes down here where, let's put the guy over into the Sphinx area so I can demonstrate here. Come on, where can I put him? I guess I can put him here.
He never does what I want him to do when I use the little yellow man.
Okay, right here, the water would have come down, and I'm going to suggest to you two things. Number one, the water that came from outside between these two structures, which I have pointed out and will again, would have come down and it would have been a separate channel, would have come down. You can see where it would have come down
How
here.
much is that going up to the pyramids there? Just asking. Because
How
it
much
looks
is
quite a lot lower than the pyramids.
right
Sphinx.
now, where this guy, where I have this image, you're probably at about 40 to 50 feet above sea level, with the down here being 20 feet above sea level, and this pyramid being at 60 feet above sea level, this one being at 65 feet above sea level, and that one being at 70 feet above sea level. So yes, you've got about 20 feet, you've got about half a mile, but you've got a 20-foot deviation between the elevation there and the elevation here at ground level. And water runs downhill. So the water would have come down here. I don't know if these are current day or if they've been there since forever, but the water would have still run down here. Behind these horses is where that hole is, or the horse camels is where that hole we were talking is. Okay, the water would have run down and would have spilled into here, which is why they see all this erosion, would have spilled down into here and would have been joined by the water from the other side, spilled into here. They fill this pool. This is actually a pool. And then if we go look at the other side, you can see how it is a pool, and then it spills. Let's see, that's going to be too low. Let's put it here and see what we can see. Now, God, they blurred out everyone's faces. Some people are that afraid of being seen. I was at the Great Giza Pyramid, but I didn't want to tell my dad because I told him I went to the bathroom. I don't know. Anyway, it fills this, and you can't see it because they blurred it out. But there's about a 3-foot retaining wall, which would allow the water within this structure to be about 3 feet. In fact, you can find pictures of when it floods, how this is a pool of water that they have to pump out to allow tourism back in. You can also see how they have stairs here to go up. That's because it spills down into here, and then this would have then spilled out into what was the Nile, because water runs downhill. Now, the reason I think it did this, I'm just assuming right now, and this is where I need somebody else. Right here, you can see a channel. In fact, if we put our guy there, you can see how there's a channel of where water would have run down this channel right here and gone out to.
Just one second. Yeah, just put Angel back in. Here, carry on.
Water would have run down this channel and out and joined the other water. In fact, I'm going to suggest to you that this area right here, where there's a hole and there's a big hole back there, and we can get into this when we get into the fine point, but this would have been where it trapped the heavy water to retain in this system, and it was the light water which was allowed to escape the system, because the heavy water they wanted to retain. They understood the value of heavy water. And that water would have then come down, here.
So asking, you know those little square things there that look like sort of a bit like batteries? What were they then? Just for retaining all the waters?
No, I think I know what they were, and this is an assumption, and I'll get to that in just a second. Come down, you can see here, there's a ridge here that we put the road next to, but there's a ridge here, and that would have, you can actually see it right here, and you saw how there was a pool here, and there was, when we put the Google guy there and looked at it, there was a pool, then it spilled over, then there was a pool, then it spilled over, and there's another pool, spilled over, pool. Actually, I don't know, that's like a jungle gym set, and then it would spill into what was the Nile, where all these houses and stuff are. But this would allow the liquids from here to join from the side, where the liquids that came from up there would come down, pool, and go into here. Now, I'm going to suggest to you what this is doing, and you can believe me later or not. But the reason that these pools don't go down waterfalls like you have here is because the pool here, since it runs as a stream, would maintain a conduit, would always maintain a conduit between that hole that we were discussing right there, which I'm going to suggest to you is equivalent to, am I still on, I can't see me, so would be equivalent, that's this one here, okay? It's going to be equivalent to the what they like to call the Osiris shaft. Now, the Osiris shaft is the true ground for the system. And what is occurring is the Osiris shaft is on this side of the conduit and is over here. The waters here would be, I told you that this outside is filled with water, but it's not really filled with water. If you actually look, I can probably drop a Google guide. They don't let you walk on that side. How come it's not grabbing my Google guide? Because I'm on the wrong screen. Stop. Go away. Give me
It's
a
like
second.
being in a minefield when you're on here. You're dodging things, dodging the time, dodging that. Oh no, the little yellow man won't go down. Oh, we've got put another hangout in so that we can all talk and show pictures and stuff. But anyway, carry on.
All right. So you notice they don't let you put the Google guy around here. They've roped it all off. But if I drop it right here, the closest I can get, you can see how, well, you can't totally see it, but the elevation here is a little bit higher than the elevation over here, only by maybe 6 inches. But if you're water does not run uphill, which means that the water would have hugged the outside of this. The water would have not gone.
So they were in water then?
Well, yes. They had water around them. And they utilized water for many parts. But the water here, you can even see, again, I don't know if this is current day. I think these look like current day bricks. But even if they weren't, you could see how the water would have pooled and come down across here. Now, again, this may be a...
Oh, right, Angel, what are those holes on the other side then?
These ones I'm not 100% sure. But these ones I think were grounds. And what's most important is the ones way down here and over here. Those, I believe, were the inlets for the water. And those ones are going to be at the same elevation as the pool I was suggesting to you, which is right outside of the third pyramid. And what that would allow, you gotta look at this as a big circuit. What that would allow is the energies which are pooled in here that want to get to the potential of this conduit there, which is shorted to this pool here, because it's at the same elevation as the water is coming out there. I'm sorry, this pool doesn't short to this pool. This pool shorts to the conduit of water coming down and shorts to this, which I'm going to suggest to you is the hole over here, which is the pseudo fake ground. So this water, because of the water being a conduit, connects to that ground there. That is the potential that this energy is trying to get to. The true ground for the system is this here, which shorts to this water, which again, you notice there's no waterfall in there. It's all just streaming water. You can even see in here some of the scarring of it, and you can see that it would have run downhill and joined this pool, which is separated from the pool on the other side of the conduit. God dang it, it did the thing where it zoomed in on the screen again and not on the map. So I don't have access to my Google guy and all that stuff down at the bottom. I don't know how to change that other than closing it and reopening it. So I'm just going to play with it as it is. But that, and it's blurring now because it's not the right resolution. But this water would have contacted with the ground there, and that would have allowed this structure to be connected to a true ground. This structure is connected to a fictitious ground, and this structure has no ground. Then now it's bouncing around again. You know, I'm gonna have to close this and reopen it just because it's.
And you can eat there now, just there in the Pyramid Lounge.
You probably can.
Yeah, that's more important, isn't it?
All right. Boop. Bam.
So it was surrounded by water, but it wasn't very deep water at that bit.
Nope. In some areas, it wasn't deep at all. They needed water, but they didn't need deep water. The water is a conduit, but it is not. It didn't have to be deep. In fact, it could have just been a puddle. The looks of it, the water in here was probably no more than a foot or so deep. And if you don't,
it's just
if you
coming
didn't
up
know
now. Now show it, yeah, because it's just coming up on the screen now. Yeah.
This is the primary entrance that everyone likes to call, and the other entrance actually protrudes out and comes out of the water. And you notice there's even a ridge line right there. Comes out of the structure about 20 feet outside of the structure. And if you follow what I'm suggesting, that is where the water would be. The water was maintained about 6 to a dozen feet away from the base of the structure, but still there. That would give the potential for the energy to try to get to ground. And one of the reasons why this whole structure has all this what are they called? Magic numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, the pi, all the magic ratios and all that stuff, is because they needed consistently around the whole structure to make sure that at no point, just like when you're working on traces on a green board on a computer, you can't have the traces get too close together. Otherwise, the static electricity or the electricity will jump from one conduit to the other. The potential has to be there, but you can't have it too close. This whole system was set up so that the energies are channeled, focused, but never allowed to short where they don't allow them to short. And again, this is why having a physical model would allow people to see it, because there's so much happening. The system is simple, but there's so much happening. It's hard to see because you can't see the water, you can't see the static electricity, you can't see the energy flowing. You can't see the energy flowing on a PC board, but that doesn't mean it doesn't flow. You can't see you go to an old log flume where they used to run logs down the side of a mountain, and you can see parts of it. But if the logs aren't flowing in it and the water isn't flowing in it, it kind of looks like you don't know what it is unless you've seen water flowing in it and you've seen logs flowing in it. Somebody coming across it that has never floated a log down the side of a mountain, you don't know what it is. And when you were told it was to hold the dead body so it's closer to the high sky, so the pyramid, so the soul could get up to the sky faster, you'll believe it. Unless somebody gives you an opposing view, you'll believe what you're told. Well, I'm here to give you an opposing
You must
view.
find that very frustrating when you've worked out what it is, Angel.
I do, which is why I said part of my largest problem is people's normalcy bias to think it's a tomb. people's cognitive dissonance to not think that they had intelligence, to not think that they understood things that we didn't understand up until the last century and a half. Well, and that's another rabbit hole. I could suggest to you that people like the Templars, the higher ends, the popes, the cardinals, all those people, they may have understood static electricity. I think they were probably electroplating coins ever since they decided to start making coins. I think the reason why churches all have church steeples were usually some metallicness up there were because they were collecting static electricity and probably doing electroplating. If nothing else, I think they were making colloidal silver, which was what we call today holy water. Only today it's just water because they don't waste their money anymore. But back in the day, they actually were focused on health and things like that. And if you know anything about colloidal silver, if you put your fingers in it and touch it to your head once a day, or even just rub it on your hands, once a week or whatever, it is antibacterial, antimicrobial. It helps you with so many ailments. It is a good thing. And if you don't believe that it's nature doing it, if somebody tells you, God tells you to put your hand in there and touch it to your head, or they sprinkle it on you with that stupid thing, they walk around sprinkling it into the people that are standing there. Oh yes, give me the blood of Christ. Oh yeah, give me the blood of Christ. They're getting pieces of nature and it is helping them, but it has, well, I'm not going to say it has nothing to do with God, because God is nature, in my opinion. God is nature. If God says, hey, when it's moist and humid outside, it's going to rain later. Well, that's nature. That's God. It's happening. You can't, I don't know, you can separate them, but I don't think you
they do today, don't they, with a thing called HARP. They mess around with everything, but it was nature. It was all natural. Now we don't know what we've got.
We can seed clouds. We can stimulate the ionosphere. We can, I call it ionosphere because they call it ionosphere, but we can call it ionoplane if you want. But the upper elevations, we can do things and make nature happen. You could do that again in a classroom scenario. You can dangerously take the cover off your microwave and have lots of fun with water in a controlled environment. Now, I'd be wearing a lead suit and stuff like that when you start playing with it, but in nature, it happens on a slower scale, but still, microwaves do exist in nature. They are being emitted from the sun. I mean, it happens. It stimulates the water. It evaporates, goes up into clouds, and rains back down. This happens. You don't have to.
But you know what? I think they've done this with most things, Angel, because I watched this video where this guy's explaining that castles weren't for fighting; they were storing the food, storing goods.
Well, I mean,
but they told you they're for fighting, but they weren't.
Well, I think a castle was where somebody wanted to live. And they wanted to fortify it, and they'd want to store more than just food. They want to store all their goods, their daughters, their wives, their, nice Porsche in the backyard and a Lamborghini out on the side. And they want to put up a wall because, you can't call the sheriff and say, hey, this guy is trespassing. You have to pull out a bow and arrow and shoot him in the head. So castles were designed for fortifying your stuff and protection and storage and living. I mean, I don't think they were nuclear bunkers, if that's what you're asking. I think castles is where people lived, and some of them got pretty elaborate. Trap doors, secret passages. You think somebody's attacking you from the front.
What I'm saying is the same things happen with them, where they told you that they were for fighting. And then this guy, well, anyway, it's a long story, that one. I made the videos about that about 2-3 years ago.
Why would they be for fighting? Even if you're in your own house today and a couple of people come by like, hey, lady, come out here. We need some food. Yeah. You're going to go into the back. You're going to grab your gun or your crossbow. You're in the UK, so I guess you're not allowed to have a gun. Grab your crossbow and say, hey, dude, if you don't back away, first I'm going to call the bobbies over. And if they don't do anything for you, I'm going to take it into my own hands and shoot you. because it is defense. You want to call it fighting, it is fighting. But you don't take a castle and drive it down the street to attack your neighbor. It's not like an MRAP or an army tank. It stayed still, and it is for fortification.
Well, they were saying that they weren't made to fight. They were there to store things.
Well, it's
so
more
it's
than
a completely different story. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is it's just the same story like with the pyramids. It's just they've had to cover it up and pretend that we had horses and carts, when everything you're talking about sounds like, you need to put it in blueprint. It's so detailed. You're an engineer now, a lecturer.
Well, I think part of the reason why people, I'm not saying that they're trying to hide what the pyramid did. I think that their normalcy bias won't let them see what the pyramid did. They believe the tomb dogma stories, and they're unwilling to reevaluate the structure with current knowledge. If you walked up upon it today, if we found it in Alaska, if we found it in Antarctica under the ice, I think we would reevaluate it, because it wouldn't be in Egypt, therefore it couldn't be for the pharaohs. And we would look at it with a new eyes and say, hey, let's evaluate this structure and see what potentially it could have done. Look at the scarring on it. Look at the marks that are on it. Again, since we didn't know what electricity was, when we saw that scarring on the southern shaft out of what they like to call the Queen's Chamber, what I like to call the Ark Room, they would not have in any way fathomed a bolt of electricity cutting that arc in the wall over hundreds of years of sparks. They couldn't. They wouldn't have, because they didn't know what electricity was. We weren't dealing with electricity in high voltages.
What happens if they did know what electricity was? Just saying, it was that bit was different as well.
Well, I'm saying the people who designed this knew. The people who discovered it didn't.
Right. Can I just say we're back to 20 minutes now, and this one will cut off as well.
Well, that's fine. We can go again if you want, or we can, I could talk about this for hours, honestly. And you can.
I know you can, Angel.
You can chop it up and make me sound better, but take out my ums and uhs and.
No, it's fine. You're a human.
But.
Well, I think you've done very well. I think you're very organised. You think, oh, I'm not organised enough. Zip, zip. We need about 10 arms. You need to be Inspector Gadget. But the internet doesn't let you do it. You've done really well, Angel.
Well, thank you. But I think that people aren't willing to think that what they were taught might be false. And hence, if I walked up to somebody middle-aged and said, hey, let me tell you about the pyramids. I learned about all them in school, pharaohs, star alignment, souls going this way. I've seen how they had little things with hearts and stuff in them, blah, blah. I said, you know what? Those were found in tombs. And the tombs were found in the Valley of Kings and lots of other places upon the earth. But no bodies, no tombs, no little clay jars with hearts and livers and brain matter were ever found anywhere near, to my knowledge, any structures that you would refer to as a pyramid. So people love to put the two of them together falsely, and because of that, I basically, just like Yoda said to Skywalker, I need to unlearn you before I can teach you. You need to unlearn what you have falsely been taught before you can even follow down the path of this, which is one of the reasons why I say that's the Great Giza Pyramid.
15 minutes we've got, Angel, again. That went really quickly.
Now it's anything but the Great Giza Pyramid. Help me dissect it. When people think it's the Great Giza Pyramid, they already have precognizant notion of what they think it is. And that's, again, one of my hurdles.
Even though they've never found a tomb in any of the pyramids.
Right. To my knowledge, no pyramid has been a tomb. They may have found a dead body or so. I'm not saying that somebody didn't crawl into one of the pyramids and say, hey, this is better than a cave because I don't have to worry about a bear coming by, and may not have died. And then somebody else found them and said, hey, we found a dead body in a pyramid. That's great. But that doesn't mean that dead body was made for that person, or that pyramid was made for that person.
I just think it's crazy that they put the pharaohs with the pyramids. And I think that a lot of them were Indians and they had elongated heads as well. That's all crazy. They don't really, they might show you that they've got elongated heads, but they don't talk about all that. And a lot of the pharaohs were black.
I'm the Egyptian timeline hierarchy, who's where, is something that it's afterwards, and B, it's not something that I've even really tried to invest in, because that's a whole nother learning thing, and it's great. I talked to somebody for about 2 hours who told me about Pharaoh blah blah and dynasty blah blah, had kid blah blah, who married blah blah, who slept with blah blah, who fighted blah blah, who did blah blah and did blah. That's great and wonderful, and he could be totally right on the history of the Egyptians. That doesn't help me in any way about this. Although he's like, I know this one was made for this pharaoh, and the reason it does this is because the justification for his reasoning is based on the tomb dogma, and doesn't even make sense. When I tried to call him out on things, he was like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, you're the expert on this. You're the one trying to tell me how some pharaoh had this made. Why did he? I don't know. I'm like, well, are you willing to listen to it? Oh, I got time. I don't have time. I got to go.
What? When we're looking at this picture, you can see that they call those square things burial things, and they've all got holes in them because obviously they were trying to loot them, weren't they?
Well, I don't know if they were trying to loot them. I think the holes are there because they are part of the system, and understanding the system and understanding how electricity flows and understanding how you need gaps and barriers.
Then,
well, that goes into a really big gray area, because just like I say, what's the difference between a pyramid and a pile of rocks? Even what a lot of times we call today batteries aren't really batteries, because a battery is a bunch of cells joined together to form a battery. It's like, where do you change the definition?
But we're batteries as well.
Well, you could say that. I think, if anything, the surface of the Great Giza Pyramid was a capacitor. It will store the static electricity until it meets its capacity, and it will discharge as fast as it can. That really makes it a capacitor, not a battery. And there are fine points between the difference between a battery and a capacitor. But until, I can get somebody to understand the system and really debate with me about the system, how you define it, some of these things may need new definitions because they don't fit the definitions of what we call them. Like, I'm going to suggest to you that what they're doing in there is electrolysis, but it's not electrolysis the way we do it today, where we put a positive and a negative connected to a battery and run power through it. Because they didn't have just oxygen and just hydrogen. There are spots in the system where you can see they had a bleed from the wrong gas, which is why the subterranean chamber. Let me go back to this map. This one down here. Oops, got it upside down. This one here is partially designed the way it's designed, is because the hydrogen, which would have bled off that one rock down here that I was talking about, the one that they moved, the hydrogen was designed to bleed off and come back into this room, where the oxygen was allowed to escape out and go up and be the one that would fight through the loose rocks and create the back pressure, blah, blah, blah. The other gas is in there. You can see the way it's constructed, how a second gas was allowed to go back into the larger of the rooms and was quarantined within there, where the oxygen, which would be the heavier gas, would flow under it and out of the system. And I didn't build the system. I just pointed out to you. You can think of it like water and oil if you want, and look at water and oil. It's going to do the same thing as the hydrogen and the oxygen would. I mean, right. It wasn't purely electrolysis, but we can simulate it in a classroom with electrolysis. But there's more to it. There's more happening within nature than I understand exactly. But again, that's why I need somebody with a clean pair of eyes that will actually look at the system and help me dissect it. Come on, dissect it and understand what's going on. But it's difficult when every time I try to talk to somebody, they get lost back in the tomb dogma. Now, the next time this breaks, I'm going to have to take him out. He's telling me he needs to go for a walk.
Well, should we stop? We can stop for a minute now if you like, and I can just set a new one up.
All right, do that and give me a 5-minute break. Give me 10 minutes. I'll be back at the hour. Does that sound good?
Then. That's good.
Right.
But we've been going for nearly 2.5 hours already.
All right. Well, I'll be back in just a few. He just needs to empty his kidneys.
Okay.
All right.
We're just waiting for the video to end, but I just wanted Angel to show you the aqueduct, the bird sanctuary.
Right here at the top of the hill, you take this little road, go up to the top of the hill, is an area called Khufu's Diner, which I'm told is supposedly a nice place to eat. I've never been there, so I can't tell you. But see, there's parking and stuff like that. This is all commercial, current day commercial stuff.
There's no one in the parking thing.
Well, it could be evening, it could be a weekend. I don't know, but you're right. No one's in the parking thing. And also, if you try to bring your Google guy over there, there are no photos. Oh, I guess there are photos inside Khufu's palace. So let's take a look, see what the diner looks like. Oh, yeah. See, you can go there and get some food. And you can overlook and see those. That would be a cool place. I'd like to have dinner there someday. Tell you what, if I get lots of money, I'll take you to dinner there someday.
Cool, but I'd like to go there for dinner.
If you were to actually venture down and around the corner here, this, which is not important to anybody because it means nothing. No one cares about some tomb for some birds. Number one, it's not even a tomb for some birds. It's a bat sanctuary today. You're not allowed to go down there because it's a bat sanctuary. There's billions of bats. They live in there. They're happy, and they don't want somebody going in there. But whether or not it's a bat sanctuary or a bird sanctuary, it is at 80 feet elevation, and if you go into that structure, it goes down into what they call the Lost Caves of Giza, or the Caves of Giza, whatever you want to call them. They're not lost. They're still there. So how can they be lost? But either way, the documentary is called The Lost Caves of Giza. But under there are cave systems. Now, I'm going to suggest to you at the time, it was an aquifer. And sorry. Yeah, it was anyway, the water would have filled those caves, and this would have been the head of it, or where it would have come out. And they put cement and stuff around it and built it up, and we call it the Tomb of the Birds, but that would be the source of the water on the plateau. Now, I also told you I was going to get into these, what they like to call mastabas. Say mastaba, blah, blah, mastaba, blah, blah. I don't know currently if they are configured in such a way that we're supposed to read them like Braille or something like that, like there might be communication. However, knowing that this entry over here is about 80 feet in elevation, and the mouth where it goes into the Great Giza Pyramid is also approximately 80 feet in elevation. The water would have had to have come across this, and I keep saying it would have run downhill, but I don't think it actually ran downhill because it would have had no way to go back up to get into the structure. So this, that we uncovered all these, we excavated this out of sand and stuff. It is quite potentially possible that they are designed to maintain the sand that was on top of them and not allowing it to flow or shift. It would have been the base and support.
And they wouldn't have had holes in them then, would they?
Well, I do think they are designed the way they are designed. And the reason they have holes could be because that's how they were molded. I don't think somebody went through with a big, because those holes are like 6 feet in diameter. These are not small holes. No one went through there and drilled these after the fact. Those are huge holes. You walk onto there, you're going to fall into that. Some of them go down pretty deep. It could potentially be that when we look at it and we play, and when I get somebody who's more of an electrical engineer might say that, you know, they needed that in order to ground the water or something. I don't know. But I do know that the source of the water is where they call the Tomb of the Birds, and where the water one of the places the water would flow would be into the Great Giza Pyramid.
Do you think it was a place of storing some extra water?
Well, it is possible that there was a large pool, and that was the base of the pool and designed to keep the sand that was the floor of the pool from shifting. It is possible, but that's speculation. I'm not
And don't
saying
forget, they could have taken away more than they should have done, and it was part of the system, and they've taken it away to show us what was underneath.
Yes, they excavated the piles of sand that were there to come to those, and because they were piled, since they were under the sand, I don't think that their shape was a functional part of the system. Like I said, it may have maintained the sand from shifting, and or it may have been piled under the sand because we're eventually, with time, supposed to read these like a big QR code or Braille or something like that, because I know there's communication here, but I don't know.
So you believe that they were put in when the pyramids were made? They're not tombs or anything like that?
They may have been put in afterwards. It is potentially possible that these things were in function for, a century, and then, after they stopped working, somebody came by 100 years later and put those things in. But being that they're littered all over the structure, they're located on the sides of the structure, and they're located on the east side of the structure, I'm not 100% sure that they were not there at the time of the functioning of the unit. Exactly why they're shaped, that has not yet been, it has not revealed itself to me, but they do exist. Can't deny them. They're
When
there.
I first saw that, to me, they look, I mean, it's not that I know anything, but you think, oh, they look like some sort of battery pack or something.
Well, again, it may be down the road that we will be able to dissect them communication-wise, like Braille or a QR code, and it's not beyond my belief that these guys were intelligent enough to have hidden information within the physical structure.
Okay, should we just stop there? It says this call is about to end.
Yeah,
so I was going to turn it off for a... Right, we're back in the same position now, Angel. We go again.
All right, now
we're talking about those things still, so Angel's going to say a bit more.
They like to call them mastabas. Here's it says mastaba, but it shows a picture of the Giza pyramid.
So what does that mean then?
It doesn't even show the Giza pyramid. It's showing the center one.
What does mastaba mean then?
I don't know what mastaba means. It's a name that was assigned to them by somebody, and I don't know if it actually means something in Latin or Hebrew or something like that. All I know is that is a name that whenever somebody refers to it, they refer to it as. And the way that they're shaped funny, like look at this, how they're shaped. There's like almost no rhyme or reason. Now, I'm sure, hopefully, before I die, I will ascertain the rhyme or reason. But they are there. They do exist. I haven't ruled them out as being, something to dismiss. However, I don't know exactly what function they performed, other than potentially keeping the sand from migrating or the, whatever within the area. But some of them are big, as you can see. Some of them are small. Some of them have multiple holes. Some of them have one hole. I mean, some of them go down straight. Some of them are a J shape. Some of them are an L shape. The hole goes down and bends to the north, south, east, or west, usually one of the cardinal directions. And I would hope that in time, I will learn every hole and whether it goes down to what elevation and what direction it turns and what.
Hey, Angel, like you were saying, it's a working machine, and you still wondered whether it was something to do with airships and they were using gases to fly with. But wouldn't they have wanted to contain it somewhere? Couldn't they have been containers? But I know you said they're all different shapes, but now you see that, you think, what the hell were they? But in a way, were they to contain it? Oh, over there we've got the heavy water. There we've got helium. Over there we've got whatever other gases they're doing.
If they were
And
to
you say that there might even be a gas that we're not like, it's not important to us today because these are abandoned and they were using something else that they made. You said that as well, didn't you, in the last
Yes,
hangout?
I did. Let's go back to the first thing. Do I think they were used for containment? I doubt it, because if that was the case, the hole would have gone to a hollow void on the inside of the mound. It doesn't. They go down, in some cases 20, 30 feet, and then terminate. They don't expand out and become a hollow void like a vacuole. So storage, I don't really think so. The fact that they would have been underground level and or under the water level also kind of makes me not think that. However, when dealing with heavy water, something I didn't get into, and it is more of a sciencey thing, once you understand how the system works, heavy water has a feature, it's called creep. Heavy water will, for the lack of a better term, evaporate into light water and then recondensate at a lower elevation. And that is how it will escape its containment vessels. And I'm not too uncertain that the way this is designed with these is to trick the heavy water into not escaping the containment vessel, aka the pyramid. And it may be something that we will find down the road, just like on an airplane, how they have those little antennae that stick off the back of the wing that make no sense to anybody. They're not radio antennas. They're designed so the wind turbulence hits those little antennas and breaks, and it doesn't allow the wind turbulence to build up. But you don't know that or understand that unless you put them in a wind tunnel and you put some smoke in there where you can see the turbulence. Just like when somebody's flying and they come behind another jet that just went by 60 seconds ago. They hit that turbulence and they get all thrown around because the wind is still spinning in a turbine, in a little funnel shape. And it will do that for a good couple of minutes, which is why planes can't land one immediately behind the other, and why smaller planes have to stay out of the area of larger planes for a little while, is the planes mix the air and set it into a turbulent mode. These are features of nature that you can't visualize unless you add smoke to it to see them. And unless you are really working with wind tunnels and you understand aerodynamics, those little antennae off the back of the wing make no sense. They don't, you can't really see it unless you understand how the winds and elements are reacting. And we will probably find down the road that the way that they are constructed, when put into a laboratory scenario, may help to quarantine the heavy water within the system. I'm not opposed to that. It's what in my heart is probably most likely.
Are those things anywhere else they're not on the plateau at all, are they? It's just there around the Great Giza?
It does seem to only be around the larger of the pyramids, the Great Giza Pyramid. Now, it's not the taller, it's the larger. And
oh, yeah, because one's built a lot further down in the ground.
Right. The Great Giza Pyramid sits at a lower elevation than the one they like to call the Khafre Pyramid, the one I got my thing on right there. Okay. It sits at a lower elevation, and because it's neutered at the top, it doesn't go to as high as an elevation. So the second largest structure by volume is a taller structure. The South Tower is a taller structure. The North Tower is a shorter structure in elevation, but the North Tower is a larger structure in volume.
Got that. And
it's the north structure that seems to have all these markings around it, the mastabas. And again, I I don't know if there aren't or weren't any. Well, there aren't. If there weren't any over here to the north of the structure that we have decided to get rid of to make way for the parking lot and residential activities. So there may have been more to this plateau and the configuration than I understand. Also, I'd like to find out the area up here. See these up here? They are of the same like configuration, but they're way to the side up here. And I'm still trying to get, because my maps don't show me the elevation over here. All the maps kind of show the elevation around the Great Giza Pyramid. And when I ask this thing for terrain, it doesn't really give me anything. But what I'm getting at is I want to find out the elevations in this area to find out if basically which way the water would have been going or what's going on. Because like I said, these exist. They are a like configuration, but they're way off to the side. So if they have any bearing on the function, knowing how and where they reside in elevation and distance and all that sort of stuff might help me to come to some conclusion. Because if it's just to quarantine heavy water, why the heck are they way the heck over here, which is like, a half mile away?
Looks like there's some stuff there they haven't excavated or something,
Well,
isn't there?
that's true too. I mean, they may not have
Yeah, look, 1,
excavated
2, 3. There's 3 things there.
Well, there's lots of stuff. Now, the other thing is it seems that over here, this is actually downhill from the structures. Look at them. They're way up there. Here's your Khufu's eating place. And right over here is the source of the water. So we may have done some other changes to the top structure, the surface structure, terrain, that is making it difficult for me to understand the entire system. But there may have been more here. There may have been a flood that washed some of this out. You notice here that looks like there's some erosion and stuff. This is pretty, it's like a cliff that goes off the edge there. So I'm not opposed, honestly, that this whole area right here may have been a pool and saturated. Again, all fed by this, and over time it would have filled that whole area, but still it would have spread over and worked its way down to here and done everything else I suggested. But this area seems to be an area that could have been a large pool or lake to start off with. And another side of the thing is there are people who have said they found evidence of docks.
I suppose the houses wouldn't have been there then. Oh dear me, I've got a frog in my throat.
No,
the houses wouldn't have been there then, would they?
Those are current day construction. I don't think they're older than a few hundred years. If probably they're not older than 20, 30 years. Right here. But there is talk of how in areas here along this cliff line, they have found evidence of a dock where boats would have docked. So it could be that this whole area up here was saturated, and that if the Nile went from here and swung back, swung around it and came back and went down here. Again, this would all depend on looking at the topology, because water will run downhill. That if this Nile was over here and swinging back and forth, that it could have pooled water over here. It could be potential. This whole area right here may have been a pool, and then it would have flowed over and down. But that doesn't change.
Except the green isn't there, is it? So it's obviously the edge of something, because the green and brown is the other side.
Well, the green and stuff is, leaves and trees. And I don't think, obviously all this right here, this is all current day houses and stuff. This would have all been, to my understanding, underwater. Where people are living would have been the base of the river. Excuse me.
You're not bored, are you, Angel?
Not bored, I'm tired.
What time did you get up today then?
I got up around 5.
Oh my God, why?
That's when I got done sleeping.
Okay, that's why you yawned. Is there anything else you want to talk about then?
You know, there's probably things that I know that I haven't said yet, but being that there's so many different avenues, different directions we could go, it's you know, again, this is why I think
What about those tunnels that Brian Forrest has been in then? They go on for miles.
yes, they do. There are tunnels. Again, there are more holes on the surface here. See if I can find one that actually go down, that were in this pool here, that go down. That's probably part of the reason they closed this side off. Oops, that's the structure. This side right here. This is the area. You know how I showed you it was all blocked off? There are conduits and stuff that go down in through here. There are a myriad of piping and
You can
patchwork.
almost see them on the picture. You can almost see lines going across.
Yeah, practically can. Although this dotted line and stuff like that, I'm sure is drawn in there. I don't think that's physically on the plateau. See how it's moving as I'm zooming in? Okay, that's not physically there. That's something they put a dotted line around it to segregate things, which is hard sometimes when you're looking at this to understand what they've added like this. And here's a part that bugs me to all heck. Okay, see right here, it says something about a pyramid of blah blah blah, but it's not pointing to that. And then you come in here and it says Giza Eastern Cemetery. Okay, there's no cemetery here. They're putting markings on the structure alluding to the fact that something is right there, but nothing is right there. I don't like when they point things out that don't exist. Tomb of mirrors, blah blah blah. It's where do they take this block of sand and say, oh, this was a tomb of somebody else? There's nothing there. In fact, some of them, this might even be the one. I've clicked on it and poof, you're inside. And okay, that one doesn't give you anything. It's just a marking of a name. Okay, this one has a something cemetery. One or two of them you click on and it shows that you're inside like a coffee shop, but there's no coffee shop here on the plateau. Maybe it's this one. Waiting for it to work out. Nope, that one comes up with absolutely nothing. It's just pointing to something. One or two of these, of course, now it's not working for me. Okay, tomb of this guy. Let's click on this and see what happens. Okay, now this is showing one that has hieroglyphics and somebody a statue in it. To my understanding, and I'd love to be corrected because I want to be factually true, there is nowhere on this plateau, nowhere within like 2 miles of the Great Giza Pyramid, do you find any statues or Egyptian markings or anything of that nature. But yet they're alluding to something being located on the plateau right there. And when you take your little Google guy and drop it, it's just sand. I've done it before. Oh, now it's not letting me do it. But it's you're just sand. There's nowhere to go into. But yet you click on it.
So that doesn't have those boxes just there then. That's something different.
Right. But what you're looking at there in the picture, right there, is not located on the plateau. They love to plant false information into your mind. Oh yeah, when I was looking on Google Maps, I saw this thing. So let's go there. Where do I find this? Oh, it's over in Cairo. Cairo, that's like 20 miles away. Yeah. Well, how come it says it's on the plateau? Well, that way we can make you think that it had something to do with the pyramids and the Egyptians.
Tombs.
Now, I'll believe that particular one may be a tomb. It has a statue, probably has some, cartouches and all this other stuff, but it's not on the plateau. It's not on the Giza plateau.
They've got to bring that bit in, haven't they? That's what it is.
Right. I'm just pointing out how they do,
even though it isn't.
They do this deceptive stuff. They do deceptive stuff, and I don't know if they're actually intentionally trying to hide things, or they just want it there so people click on it and they're like, oh, Dad, that's what I want to visit while we're there. But the fact that they try to allude to the fact that it's there when it isn't is the part that irks me more. I don't care if they
another
call
one just there. Look, the tomb of Queen, whatever it is.
Right. Now that one is physically there. But that isn't. That is located up here next to this structure. So they're not even showing you what is physically where they're showing you. Because right here, there are no piles of rocks. Okay? That's not what's in the picture. That's not that. And that's part of the thing that irks me when I'm trying to explore this. I don't know if it'll let me take a Google guy. I got to move it a little bit further away. Now, the other thing I found, it's not on Google's website, but there are a couple of websites that people took their nice, their Nikon's cameras and walked around and took pictures. And so I have more pictures than just what's here. So I'm not assuming this stuff just on what I'm seeing here.
Oh,
Okay.
there's nothing there when you're looking down. How would you
Right.
know that those things were there?
These ones are the ones we were looking at the picture of, but they're not over here. They're
No,
they're
there's
not.
no hole.
They're not here, which is what this alludes to, that there's something. Hey, Dad, let's walk 10 minutes across this dang hot
And
desert
why
over
wouldn't they want that one to be there if it was an actual tomb?
to get there to find nothing.
Yeah, wow.
So there's false information all over, and that again is part of the hurdle I have to walk over, because I will tell somebody something like, oh no, look, and they'll point out something that alludes to be there but isn't there, because Google or whoever designed this particular page put something, erroneous information on there, which gives people a false impression and gives people, well, Google says it's there. Look, how am I supposed to believe Google from the CIA, or am I supposed to believe you, some moron living in his basement?
Can I say something? On the left there, it says Pyramids 3, Pyramids View Inn. Is that the
Right.
eating place? What's that?
No, the eating place is
Got a
kooky.
bed on it.
However, that's probably I'm assuming an inn, a place to sleep.
Well,
And
there's no
it
building there.
probably isn't even located there, because there's nothing there. There's no road to get there. So again, they
There's no
have.
inn.
It's probably over here. It's probably referring to this. And if we look, you got tennis courts and stuff like that. So
But
this
then
is
why isn't the thing on top of that then?
that's a school. Got tennis
It
courts.
looks like it's a bit in, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think an inn would have a track like that. So I'm thinking that's a school, something like that.
Yeah, let's stick a school there.
Yeah, it's a campus, MLS campus.
Right. Well, that one says the Pyramids View Inn, whatever that is.
Right, but it's not there.
Oh, it's a school. It's a school.
Well, even that this is probably a good couple hundred feet. I mean, look, this is a quarter-mile track, right? Which means this quarter-mile track means that is 1,000 feet, because a quarter mile would be 1,600 feet or so. So this is like 800 feet. So that's 800 feet from that school. There's no inn there. There's no inn there.
It's a bit frustrating, isn't it?
It is. And like I said, part of the thing is I tell people there were no markings anywhere within the structure. No markings of Egyptian things, no cartouches, no little bird drawings, no little Ankh drawings. None of that stuff is anywhere within the structure. And then somebody will send me a link to something, usually from Google, that shows me an image and points it that it's on the plateau. And I'm like, I don't care what it says. Look right here, it says there's an inn. I tell you what, you go and you hang out on the side of that cliff there, and you have a great time. I'm sure the hospitality is great. They'll give you a cup of sand to go with your sand bed and your sand sheets.
Ha ha.
But they're getting false information being fed to them, and they're using it as justification to tell me that I'm wrong. When I tell them, but look at that. Use your own gray matter. It's pointing to something that when you zoom in on it, it's not there. but it says it's there. Okay, what do you believe? Do you believe your own gray matter and your own eyes, or do you believe what a pin drop on a map says? But again, that goes back
Yes.
to the cognitive dissonance that I have to fight against. But I am almost of the belief that
Thing is,
these,
it's what we're told, and then we think it's real.
right, and you've been taught that since elementary school. So why would you
And
think?
the reason, you've worked it out as something different.
I agree, and I can't blame teachers to say like they're purposely lying to their students. And I can't blame historians for saying they're purposely lying to people. This is what they went to school for. This is what they taught. This is what they got a little piece of paper saying, I know this stuff. Okay. Like I said, I talked to somebody who is knowledgeable on all the pharaohs, the dynasties, who slept with who, whose mother was who, all this sort of stuff. It's just like I know people who know all about the Greek legends and all the other legends. Well, it was Hermes that did this, and Pisces does that, and Thor is this, and I'm like, this is great and wonderful, but you can be an expert on a subject, but it doesn't help me with this. And this is what I'm focusing on, and what I'm really focusing on is ignoring legends and stories and learning about physical science and what would happen if I applied physical science to this set of structures.
Can I say something, Angel?
Yeah.
What it is I put it out today. It's James's theory on the pyramids. Now, he watched yours video and he said it inspired him, but he's talking about the pyramid, the Great Gate. It's like a body. It's got things in it, which you have to watch the video. But he was just talking about it slightly differently. But he's not talking about it like you. He's not talking about the innards and everything like that and what you think it is. But he's just saying it's almost like a human. It's got the same sort. It's got a heart, Yeah. Anyway, you have to watch the video if you want. It's on the channel. It's out today. But he's not trying to interfere with you, by the way.
Right. I could compare a tree to a human, how it has capillaries and how the sap flows through it the way blood flows through your veins. There could be similarities, but my focus is on what.
You inspired him.
I'll watch it. I'll be glad to watch it.
Yeah, you inspired him. He liked your video. He mentions you in the video. He's just saying this is my take. But anyway, I know it's going to be different to yours. He's more spiritual. You're more into the facts.
Well, I can't fight against spiritual, because if somebody says, oh, this is a token of godness, and as long as you have this, you are protected from all spirits and blah, blah. Okay, that's great and wonderful. But I think it's a solar panel that has a battery in it with a USB port so you can power things. Oh, no, it's a token from God that'll protect you from ancient aliens.
Anyway, Angel, I know you're preposterous. It's a whacking machine, but if you look there in your picture, it says Eastern Cemetery.
Yes, it
on
does.
Those things.
Yes, it does. Because they feel that all these mastaba things were, like this one was for Bob, the cook. This one was for Jane, the lady who changed my socks. This one was for Eric. He's the one who groomed my stool. That each one was, is a burial chamber. You took somebody, you dropped them in there, you covered up with dirt, and it was for their thing.
You've never found a body in those things either.
Well, I can't say that Ted didn't get drunk one day and fell in there, and since it's 20 feet deep, he didn't break his leg, and no one could hear him yelling, and 3 days later they found him and he was dead. But that doesn't mean it was made as a burial tomb, or that they found bodies in each and every one of them. I don't think they found bodies in any of them. I don't think they found any dead bodies upon this thing that didn't happen, A, within the past 200 years, and B, can any way be suggested that they had anything to do with the pharaohs or tombs or anything of that nature? Yes, a dead body may have been found, but a dead body wasn't found in each other. You go to a cemetery, each and every stone, when you dig down about 6 feet, you're going to find bones. pretty
And
much
you know what also
every
this doesn't show is that the houses are at a lower elevation than the pyramids. The pyramids are higher on a
correct.
plateau there.
It doesn't show that. You the top looking down at it, you won't. These are things that you can't see, but you kind of have to know in order to understand the system. But yes, the pyramids are at on an elevated plateau from where the residential area is there.
And in a way, when you look at pictures, because I did it before, the drop the other side, you know, where the restaurant is, well, we couldn't find the restaurant, the inn. That's a bit of a drop down there, isn't it?
Oh yes, yes. That's see if I can get a guy. That is a very steep drop. And like I said, somebody I can probably find it again, but they are quite adamant that they found evidence of docks. There are like chunks of cement with like eyelets and stuff in them that would be just perfect for holding boats when they were docking there, probably to unload or offload their cargo. And they were located
Or taking cargo away.
Or taking cargo away. It could be that they got their whatever they were pulling out of the structure, and they brought it up and loaded it on boats and shipped it out. It could be liquid, it could be gas. I don't know. I mean, we ship gas around all the time, CNG, which is
Angel, what's those things in the corner over there? Just at the corner of the picture, there's one, but there's more of them there.
Down here?
Yeah, them. What are they? There's loads of them.
Well, I'm assuming.
Well, there you go.
That looks like a campus or something as well.
Oh, is that? You know, the military are on there somewhere, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, I'll go with military. Yeah, military. That's probably Army basing and housing.
There's probably something under there, though, isn't there?
Just like there is under the airport in where's it, Detroit, but not Detroit. I'm thinking the Mile High.
So the water from the Nile went round there.
I believe the waters from the Nile would basically have been around where the green is. It would have been at this elevation, and when we look at topology, I think it actually swung back around. Let me get this map to move up. Came around here. I think it swung here and went around. But again, this is where I'd have to look at a topology map. And, there would have been, there still will be.
I think that just shows you the size it was, because that's where it's green would have been water originally.
If the river was actually nice and wide, like the what's the one that's in Brazil? God, the really nasty one in Brazil starts with an A. I'm thinking anaconda, but that's a snake. There's a really big river in Brazil. It's supposedly one of the longest rivers. Amazon, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, that's a very wide river. This river, while it's wide, I don't think it's as wide as the Amazon. However, it could have taken that whole area, but according to historians, they say that the Nile River has migrated to the west over time. Now, that could be true. I'm not,
And got a lot smaller.
It could have also gotten smaller, especially since we've put dams in it. We've got the Aswan Dam. There's like 8 dams that we've put on the Nile River to tame it. So here's the Aswan Dam. And there's a couple other dams that we put on the river to tame it, to lessen its flow. Otherwise, there are times that it is a very heavy flow, like rains and the monsoon season and stuff like that. And the dams are designed to control it. Now, it may be possible that especially since you showed me a picture from the early 1900s where the waters were right up to the base of the Sphinx, if this river right here was actually allowed to flood, and number one, it would take out a bunch of houses. Look at all these people. They'd be like, Mom, we're underwater. But you would flood all these people. But it may be that wide when allowed to be itself. It may also be that it did migrate a little. Somewhere a boulder may have fallen and it may have migrated. It may have been closer to the edge of this green section and then circled back or something of that nature. And this is, I haven't looked at the entire topology of this whole area, but it is quite obvious, and even photos show that there were times when the Nile River flooded that the water would, at least the flooding, I'm not saying it would flood all these houses, but at least it would flood areas so that the water would come up to the base of the Sphinx. So at
They
some
must
point,
be pretty sure it's not going to flood or anything or change because they've put houses on it.
well, that's the dams. We put dams on it to control it, to tame it. But if they weren't there during the monsoon season, this river may flood, and it may flood this whole area. It may flood the whole delta. I don't, that's kind of out of my wheelhouse, exactly what would occur, because we've put dams on it. For the past 100 years, we've had dams there. So we don't know how it truly reacts. But for them to say it will never flood or it never did flood is total BS, because we have pictures from the 1920s where it did flood.
Right. Anyway, we've probably got about 20 minutes left before we have to sort of cut off again. We've been going for 3 hours now. I think that's enough information for everybody. We've got to finish off. We've got about 20 minutes. The last thing, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I'd be willing to collaborate with anybody. Be willing to answer any real questions as long as they don't deal with pharaohs and Egyptians, because I am not an expert on pharaohs or Egyptians. I'm only knowledgeable on the structures. And
two of the pyramids have got holes in them, Angel.
All three have an
The
entrance.
Great Giza have got a hole in it, and the one at the bottom's got a hole in it.
Well, it's got way more than a hole. It's got like a rip down the side. The main entrance is actually down here. Actually, down here is the entrance they like to talk about. And there's actually, it's right there. You can see the the ramp to go up to it. It's there. It's above ground level, about 20 feet, and it's also in an area which is smooth. And the other area that I was pointing out is the smooth area. You can kind of see the smoothness right here. It's right there. Those are the two ways to get in and out.
Why is that one so different to the other one? Do you think there's a little archway in that one as well?
No, I don't think there's any archway.
Why is that one so big then? The line on it, the hole in it.
Right there. Well, that I think goes back to more of the communication. And for that, let me, I don't know how to make me bigger, but when we look at that, I didn't draw this to scale. Can you make this image bigger?
No, you have to do it. You have to present yourself.
I have to present myself. That doesn't do it?
That just puts you in the middle.
That's right. I'm okay in the middle. That structure comes down, comes out, comes down, and comes out. And when we look at it, where it starts is at the same elevation as the top of the king's chamber. Now, I don't have this to scale, because if I did, this would be really small. But when you look at the elevation, this is at the same elevation as that. And when you look at the bottom of it just before the entrance, that elevation is at the same elevation as the top of the queen's chamber. Now, I don't think that's by mistake. I think that is communication.
There's a pyramid in the middle.
They're showing you the relationship between the two of them, because these guys, there's a gentleman named Karl Monk who wrote a series of books called The Code. Now, it's not the same as the lady, the ching, 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 ching lady that has the code, the pyramid code. It's a book called The Code. I can probably pull it up really quick. I think it's even on Amazon still. Google. The Code, Karl, M-U-N-C-H. There it is. No, that's a different guy. wow, he was alive half a decade ago. It seems that he may not still be alive, and unfortunately, it looks like they've squelched a bunch of his stuff off of the internet. So luckily, they do have the code, Carl. Let's see. I'll share this in just 1 second. Here it is. All right, so go here, do my presentation thing, go with that one, and go. So this gentleman, Carl Monk, wrote a series of books. I have them on PDF. I will give them to anyone for free, although if it still exists, you can find them.
It's just catching up on the screen.
You know what?
It's just catching up on the screen.
I'm not even finding. There it is. There's his video. This guy right here. This is one of them, and he has a series that he does. You see, they're about 2 hours long each, and he really goes into how they communicated with shapes, different shapes, kind of like how we do Morse code, Braille, any of those things. As long as you're consistent with what the shape represents, it's communication. Morse code is communication. Braille, with the flag, centerfold, whatever they call it, it's all communication. Only if people don't focus on it and actually pay attention to it, it's easily overlooked. Just like if you anytime you walk into a school and there are Roman numerals up there, XXXVIII, well, what does that mean? If you're not told how to read Roman numerals, it means nothing except for it's a bunch of letters. But when there's consistency, there's communication. So anyway, you can see here in this particular thing, there's a bunch of videos, and you're welcome to watch them. There's got Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. There's a bunch of other stuff in there. They all go into it. It's pretty straightforward. It's not difficult to understand. It's kind of like if somebody told you how to read Braille. It's not difficult to understand. In fact, Braille is, in my opinion, easy. It's, 6 dots. And then, that's A, B, 2 of them are C, D, that and that is E or something like that. And then it skips over and then they put a mark there and it starts all over again. And then it does it with numbers, but there's a pattern to it and it's consistent. And it's, as long as you have a consistency, you have communication. Heck, you and I can talk together with clicks, like they do in South America and stuff like that. As long as there's consistency, it's communication. And they were communicating using shapes. I'll say sizes, but shapes and relations, how things relate to something is a form of communication, just like the Nazca lines. And if you pay attention to his understanding of the code and his teaching of the code, then the markings on the outside of the structures that have no function will make more sense when you understand how they're relaying information about what's inside the structures. And if you don't know the inside of the structure, the markings on the outside of the structure, and you don't see how they're at the same elevations, the communication is lost. And especially lost if you're not even looking for it or don't know it exists. If you don't know it exists, you can't see it. But when you do know it exists, then as you're walking around the plateau and you start seeing it, you'll start understanding it. You get a letter here, a letter there, you put them together, you finally get a word, you put those together, and you can finally get a paragraph. You put those together, you'll finally get a story. And I'm hoping, as time, like I was saying, how all the dots within the mastabas may be Braille, maybe like a big QR code. There may be something in there that we can actually interpret as a language, and as long as it doesn't say, the cows flew across the street, and it might say something like the voltage of the system is around 153,000 volts. Well, then we'll know, like, hey, it's giving us information. And if we
Why would they do that? They're just saying, why would they put it into sort of stuff like that then, like a Braille? Why would they do that?
because a written language is open to interpretation and you have to understand it. If I give you something visual, then bio waste. We put the symbol of a guy with an X and a skull or a skeleton to show danger. It's a visual representation. They don't put words because they don't know what language you speak. So how can they put a word, danger, radioactive? Instead, they put an icon that shows a skeleton, like death. And hey, bad stuff, death. They don't have to put a word. The reason they used non-written things is so that it can be consistent. Whatever language you speak, the information is the same. But if I wrote it in English, somebody in France can't read it. If I wrote it in a language that is a relational language, then it doesn't matter what language you speak. You can understand the relations. Everything is a relational. Those markings on the smaller structure relate to the internal guts of the large structure, which also tells you they weren't built at a separate time. Or if you really want to be anal about it, you can say this one was built after it because they knew what was inside of there. That's great. I'm telling you, they all work together, and I'm showing you how they all work together. And I'm suggesting to you that the markings on the outside are communication and what it relates to. And as we get deeper and deeper into it, we'll probably figure out exactly what they're trying to say based on the relational thing if we pay attention to Carl and how he said that they communicate. The markings they show communicate information. And he's, I think, pretty dead on there. With
there
that,
you go. You've got 15 minutes, Angel. You've got 15 minutes to end this hangout.
We can end it right now. No, just kidding. But they spoke in a universal language. Braille, I guess Braille is technically English, isn't it? Because it uses the, what do they call it, the Gaelic? What technically is our alphabet? A, B, C, D, E, F. Isn't that called Gaelic or something like that?
I'm not sure, but I did learn that all the letters are really the same, whether they're upside down, backwards, whatever. That's how they've made the different languages. Turning the letters round.
Well, I'd kind of have to have some disagreement in there, because in Spanish we have like a CH, and you have the you got a couple of other extra letters in there, and they put tildes and schwas over it. So they add extra features. And then German's a whole nother thing. And then when you actually go to
Welsh is older than Latin, and you have lots of letters without any, A, B, C's, A's, I's, E's, O's, and U's. You just put letter upon letter, and doesn't have what do you call them? The words constant. I can't say it. Vowels.
And then you got Hebrew, and they're I don't think you'd call them hieroglyphics. What do you, the original Hebrew, their icons that they use for the letters, which I believe are representations of the sounds using the symmetric knowledge, using,
So who put those there then?
The people at the time probably said, hey, we need to represent the ah sound. Well, how can we represent the ah sound? Well, let's take the ah sound and put a plate of sand and to go ah, and the visual representation that is shown on the plate of sand as you say that letter, let's make that an icon, and that icon will represent that sound. Right. So the letter in Hebrew is actually a visual representation of the sound as the sound would represent itself in silica or in water or in talcum powder. It would just be a visual representation of the letter. And I'm sure you know about symmetrics. I know you do. So that's another rabbit hole that I play with is crop circles. And
Most
is
of those
life.
are man-made, I'm afraid.
They may be man-made. I'm not going to argue that there are not people out there doing it, but I'll tell you that the people that were man-made or not, making them in the 70s and 80s when they were way more gung-ho,
Symbols.
the representations that are made within the crops, the crop circles, are representation usually of 4-dimensional or 5-dimensional figures squashed on a 2-dimensional plane, and or they are representatives of symmetrics and stuff, so you could tell the frequency they're trying to relay. If I showed you a picture of a pattern in sand, but I drew it in the crop circle, and that pattern in the sand can be mimicked by making a sound and playing it in sand, then they're relaying that frequency to you. Now that frequency is a number. Now we call it hertz. We refer to it as hertz. And so when we say, like, 420 hertz or 432 hertz, but the icon is still an icon, but we call it 432 hertz because we at some point decided a hertz was a certain measurement of unit. But whether or not it's 432 hertz or 755 globals or 632 binglingdings, the icon that they are putting on the crop circles is still a representation of that particular sound and or frequency that they put into a crop circle thing, and they are relaying information that shows a knowledge, whether it was college kids out to do a joke or not. It shows a knowledge of a visual representation of a sound. It shows that they knew about symmetrics and they are communicating one way or another. Whether or not we accept the communication and listen to it, whether or not it was made by a college student or a physics guy that wants to, just get his name in the history book, it was still relaying information that at the time left us scratching our heads because we had not yet played with computers and taken and made a 6-sided shape in the 4th dimension and then squashed it down onto the 2nd dimension to see what it physically looks like when printed out on a piece of paper. But yet we have crop circles from the 70s representing this particular figure that we hadn't yet mathematically calculated. We hadn't yet calculated, but yet there's an icon in some sand in a crop circle 20 years ago representing something we just discovered. It tells me that somebody, whether you think it was man-made or not, somebody was displaying the knowledge visually. And I think some of the crop circles are communication. I don't think it's from outer space. I think it's from extraterrestrials, extraterritories, and or
interterrestrials.
You can call them, that's a good name. I'll call them interterrestrials.
Angel, I want to call you Christian all the time at the moment. That's stupid. But anyway, Angel, we're running out of time now on this hangout.
That's great. Let's call it a cut. GreatGeezePyramid.com. You can contact me anytime you want. I'm pretty much open to anything. Just don't ask me about pharaohs or Egyptians.
That annoys you rather a lot, doesn't it?
Well, King blah, blah, blah said, I don't care what King blah, blah, blah said. I don't care which way. I don't care which way the spirit would go. I don't care where they buried his heart. I don't care where they buried his mother, his sister, his brother, any of that stuff.
As ever, that was a very interesting hangout. You explained a bit more, and you were showing us on the screen, bits that really interest you. Thank you, Angel, because I know that you live, breathe. You're just a pyramid man, aren't you?
I got a room dedicated to it.
Yeah, it's a studio in there. If you turn that camera around, you'll see all the cameras and the computers.
Oh, you're on the laptop, so I can't do it, but
that's all right. I won't make you do it. I've seen it. Thank you, Angel. Shall we finish this hangout and talk to each other on Facebook for a little bit?
Sure.
Because in a minute it's going to say 1 minute and then we'll have to go. But I very much appreciate all your time and effort and all the drawing.
I should do this just before it ends. Everything needs a name. I call mine resonant ambient frequency and force. I decided to give it that name because I wanted to be different than Tesla, but still following his mindset, because he said everything is, was it energy, frequency, and vibration, or energy, whatever it was. It was 3 words, which basically ended up in energy, frequency, and vibrations. And I think that's pretty much what I got here. Only I want to focus on, when you're looking at the system, part of the reason I said they had to be so far apart is because they're dealing with things of nature. And in one room, you might have a bunch of static, and the other room might be a bunch of moisture. But they're different environments and different locations. And each one, you have to look at the resonant, ambient, frequency, and force, and how energy would then dissipate, because all energy wants to equalize. That's all nature wants to do, is equalize energy. And this whole structure, this whole plateau was set up to take the variances in nature and make them do work. And I think it's very underappreciated. And as long as people keep asking, where did the king sleep? And, was his wife blonde? And, freshly
Part of it happens because they told us that we were on horses and carts back then, that we didn't have big machinery, or we weren't evolved enough to create these kind of things.
Right. Well, they can say we weren't intelligent enough to create it. And I'd say, you know what? They're physically there. So I don't care if you say we weren't intelligent enough to create it. Somebody did. And I'm suggesting to you, and I will probably suggest to you until the day I die, unless, like I said, somebody gives me an ice pick lobotomy, or, a bunch of electroshock therapy, that these guys knew about hydrogen. They knew about water. They knew about hydrogen and oxygen, something we didn't know until the 15th and 16th century, 1500s and 1600s. We discovered hydrogen first. Then I think we discovered a couple of other things. And then later in the 1600s, we discovered oxygen. We were able to isolate it. A little bit after that, we discovered neon and helium and the noble gases that they found when they spun things out and still had extra volume of stuff that they couldn't figure out. So we really didn't understand the periodic table, or build the periodic table, up until 300 years. So we've only been playing with 1500s, can't do my math right, 900 years. So we've only been playing with the periodic table for 900 years. I don't think we have it perfectly accurate, because I think the one that they show in the college books with the, they call it the path of stability or whatever it is, and then you have the bubble that comes out. I could, God, I should have this stuff ready when I mention it. So
we haven't really got time now.
It's all right. It'll work. We'll get with what we get. But that we are still kind of putting the periodic table together, and still finding more things as we go. These guys were knowledgeable. I'm not going to say they had high tech, but they had high knowledge, and they knew of things a long time ago before we, just in our current era, have rediscovered them. Oh, you want another little rabbit hole? I hate current era. I hate that particular word. We're trying to get rid of BC and AD and calling it BCE and ACE, before current era and current era, BCE and CE. But that's completely not true. Our current era started long before the birth and or death of Christ. Our current era maybe started, from what I calculated, about 4,000 years before the birth and death of Christ. So if we want to call things BCE and CE, we should tack on an extra 4,000 years. We shouldn't just make Christianity go away and replace BCE and CE with current era and before current era, because we have recorded history before Christ. Hence, it is part of our current era. So it's not BCE, it is CE. So if they want to do it right, if these scientists want to do it right, these historians want to do it right, then be consistent. Our current era should have started about 4,000 years before Christ. So if you want to be BCE and CE, we should be somewhere in the 6,000s, not the 2,000s. It's not 2024 CE. It's 2024 AD, Anno Domini, year of our Lord. It's not 2024 CE. And that bugs me to all hell when I went to go see the Pompeii exhibit and everything was labeled BCE and CE. And I'm like, where do you guys come up with this stuff, and why do you force it down people's throats? You're just trying to get rid of Christianity so hard that you will, in your face, blatantly lie to you. It just, things like that bug me. And this is not a US thing, that's a world thing. And it really irks me that we do this. If we want to use BCE and CE, then we should pick a time in the history where a current era started. And if it's recorded time, then we should be somewhere around the year 6000 current era. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I think we're going to end at any moment. But yes, thank you very much for the things that annoy you the most, Angel.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Well, thank you very much for this hangout, and we'll be back, won't we, Angel?
Yes, we will. I'm not going anywhere.
Anyway, thank you very much, Angel. Mwah! And to Chatroom. Mwah!